two of them. And there were quite some discussions. And at the end of the day, a joint committee of the two parties has been set up to look at the issues and then make recommendations to the finance ministry. Hopefully that will end the matter. But the bondholders, individual bondholders, have been clear. They say they do not want to be part of it. They want to be exempted from it because government can find many other sources. It can raise money or it can cut down on its expenditure to ensure that individual bondholders are exempted from this. They give a number of reasons we will go through. So these are the two issues that will be engaging our attention this morning. And so we will take a quick break, return, introduce our guests, and get a discussion underway. Once again, this is The Big Issue. My name is Selorm Adonoo. You are welcome to the program. You're welcome back to The Big Issue. You can join the discussion via our WhatsApp line 020-444-7033. Today we are looking at the National Cathedral, a construction of a house of God shrouded in untruths and deceit. That's a question. To help us do the discussion is Palgrave Boachidankwa, government spokesperson on security and governance, Roxanne Nelson Dafiamako, Member of Parliament, South Dai, Franklin Kujo, President, Imani Africa, and then Dr. Yao Pebi, who is a global CEO of the Hard Group. He has authored an article on the subject of the National Cathedral, and his views are quite interesting in this one. So this will be the list of our panelists for the first part of the show. The second part of the show, that will deal with the state of the domestic debt exchange program. The question is, what form should government's consultations take? Franklin Kujo will be on that panel as well. Alex Mode, former Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana National Petroleum Council, is also on that panel. Dr. Theo Achampong is an economist, is on that panel. Palgrave Boachidankwa, government spokesperson on security and governance, on that panel. And then William Mensah from the Individual Bondholders Forum will also be on that panel. So this is, our job is actually cut out for us this morning. And so let's just start by giving you some updates on the happenings in the week so far as the two subjects are concerned. The first one being the National Cathedral. Now, the Member of Parliament for North Tongue, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, has expressed confidence in the SHRAJ, that's the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, to deal with the conflict of interest allegations against member and Secretary of the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral, Reverend Victor Kusi Boateng. The parliamentarian this afternoon, or in the course of the week, presented a petition to the commission, that is SHRAJ, after he uncovered links between the Secretary or the member of the board to the trustees and GNS Talent Center Limited, which is captured as being paid some 2.6 million by the National Cathedral Secretariat for construction mobilization. The following report by Citi News' Hansen Ajimine has more.
Pursuant to some revelations that were made by the Honorable Okudzeto-Ablakwa concerning some contracts of the National Cathedral, he's here at the premises of SHRAJ to present to SHRAJ a petition of conflict of interest against the person of Reverend Victor Kusi Boateng. He's here in the company of private legal practitioner Eduji Tamaklo. He is alleging conflict of interest against Reverend Kusi Boateng, who is secretary to the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral. According to revelations he had made public, Reverend Kusi Boateng, under another name, allegedly Kwabena Edu Jemfi, is board chair of a company that has received a 2.6 million contract from the National Cathedral. It is his allegation that by virtue of Reverend Kusi Boateng being the secretary to the Board of Trustees, he has engaged in conflict of interest. He is demanding, among a number of things, that the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral should be dissolved. He's asking that monies that have been paid to Reverend Kwesi Boateng, who he believes to be the same person as Kwabena Edojemfi, be recovered back to the coffers. The Honourable has gone in to meet the commissioners of Shraj. The petition has been handed over to the commissioners of Shraj. They are exchanging pleasantries currently at the office of Shraj here in Accra. We'll be finding out from the MP how he was received and how things went.
My client, the Honorable Samuel Okudeto Ablakwa, presented a petition, which copy eventually will give to the media, invoking the jurisdiction of Shraj to investigate matters involving the National Cathedral and how public funds have been expended relative. Now, my client makes the point that he sees clear evidence of conflict of interest involving one of the trustees. And as you are aware, since they are in trust position, a certain level of good faith and candor is required in their dealing with the trust, which is the Cathedral project. Now, it does appear from the evidence available that an amount of 2.6 million Ghana cedis have been moved from a private entity to the Cathedral and back to this private entity. We are asking for an investigation into it.
The Cathedral Secretariat statement is very ridiculous, absolutely preposterous, and they have to credit the Ghanaian people with some discernment. You brought your own documents to Parliament and told us that you paid JNS 2.6 million Ghana cedis as contractors' mobilization. That's what your own document said. When did this become a loan? And why didn't you state in the original documents you brought to Parliament that this was a loan? This is a ridiculous afterthought. After they have been exposed, after we have found out that Kwabena Edojemfi is apparently Reverend Victor Kwesi Boateng, one and the same. Direct, blatant conflict of interest. So we will not run after ridiculous afterthoughts. This has been a national cathedral drowning in deception, in fraud, in lies, and they have no respect for the Ghanaian people. So we have confidence in Shraj. We will wait for the Shraj investigation.
Meanwhile, the National Cathedral Secretariat has debunked these claims, insisting the monies paid to JNS Talent Center Limited are lawful. In a statement, the Secretariat indicated that the 2.6 million Ghana cedis was repayment for a loan taken from JNS Talent Center Limited to supplement payments to contractors of the National Cathedral project.
There was this issue of paying the contractors for their mobilization, and we had received notification that that transfer had been made by the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
And then we had informed the contractors, and this had delayed for quite some time. So you kind of wanted to be sure that this time around, the information we're giving them. And then we had a call from the Controller's Department that he couldn't transfer the money, the date they had promised. Apparently, those issues to do with some payroll issues that day. And so then the board member says, look, we've promised these people he'll be willing to give us a loan. And really, these are all verifiable information.
We have been speaking to Reverend Kwesi Boateng, the person who is involved in this particular matter. He has refused to speak to us on the record. He, however, says that he has referred the matter to his lawyers for response, and when his lawyers are ready with a response, we will get that from him. Reporting for Citi News, Hansen Ajaman.
All right, so you heard that report from Hansen Ajiman. That report was filed on the day Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa and his lawyers presented a petition to SRAJ. So SRAJ has since acknowledged receipt of the petition, and they have promised to work on it, and indeed they will work on it. We hope that the work is done quickly so we can put this matter behind us and get on with the building of God's house if we indeed have to get that done. Again, my guest for this morning, Franklin Kudjo, President of Imani Africa, Pelgrave Wachi Dankwa, Government Spokesperson on Security and Governance, Roxin Nelson Dapiamoko, Member of Parliament for South Dai, Dr. Yao Pebi, Global CEO of the Hard Group. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Pelgrave Wachi Dankwa. You are in government and you take decisions on our behalf. Government of the president told us that he had a promise to God to build him a house, the National Cathedral, and it appears that at every stage of this promise to God, we've seen a number of controversies. First was about the location of this important edifice. People thought that it should be sited far away from Accra so that it distributes, so that patronage of that facility distributes traffic. We don't put it in the city center. Others think otherwise. I should put it where the major monuments of state already are, Parliament, State House, etc. Eventually, government decided to put it where it is now, Rage. Controversy number two, some buildings obviously will have to be demolished. So government demolished buildings, including the Judicial Training Institute, people's apartments, buildings, etc. Payment of compensation for those is also a major issue yet to be looked at. And we hear that some persons are in court because government has not done what it had to do by paying them adequate and prompt compensation. So they are in court. That's another matter. Now, the board itself, which is the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral, is embroiled in its own internal matters. So, for example, you have Bishop Dag constantly writing, raising certain issues, we will get to that. Now, we hear of, a certain dealing between the Board of Trustees and another company, where we have now come to hear from the Cathedral Secretariat that it was a discussion that some money be loaned to the organization, and that money would have to be paid back, and indeed was paid back when they received money from government. Now, some issues have been raised. A member of Parliament for North Tong, Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, who has been the person on this beat, put a few things together, and in his estimation, those things constitute conflict of interest, fraud, self-dealing, etc. He does not understand why a member of the Secretariat will have to advance money to the organization and be paid back in what he calls, an arrangement shrouded in a lot of, inappropriate things. So, for example, he has a different name, allegedly, different date of birth, different TIN numbers, and all of that, all being part of this cathedral discussion. Are you happy with where we are on this? Is this not taken away from the object and purpose of the cathedral? We are all supposed to rally around the building of God's house and not have a situation where this is shrouded in such controversy, depleting the confidence we should be having in the project.
Selorm, a very good morning to you and to your viewers, and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's good to begin 2023 in a very good mood.
In controversies.
Well, it's just a few more days, 21 days, but the very early part of the year has been extremely good.
Yes.
And we must be grateful to our Maker for such an opportunity. Selorm, I would want to situate the conversations from the very beginning of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's mandate that the Ghanaian people have given to him. Post the 2020 general election, when the Ghanaian people voted again for President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for a second term, his mandate was continually to fulfill the desires and aspirations of the Ghanaian people through his own vision that he would want to develop this country. In that, the president decided to build a national cathedral as part of his vision for the country.
A promise he made to God, he says.
Well, you would recall that the Attorney General gave an opinion on that, that the cathedral that is being built is not the President's cathedral. The cathedral is registered as a limited liability company under the Museums and Authority Boards. So it's a mandate for the country.
Of course, that's fine. But
Yes.
since you are starting from the beginning.
I'm beginning.
So
from
I thought it would have been useful nice to add that it was a project the president wanted to do for God.
No, Selorm, I think that when we situate it in that manner, the Ghanaian people voted for President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Every single vision that a president has in terms of his deliverables, as it relates to his flagship programs, becomes the flagship programs for the Ghanaian people.
Of course, so we voted on those flagship programs. Those flagship programs were suggested to us in the manifesto. And that's what it is. And given that the National Cathedral has become such a centerpiece of his administration, that was not captured in the manifesto.
Well,
the explanation to that was that it was a personal promise he made to God. Of course, we've scaled that. We've gone past that. But I just thought it was
yes. But then also to put it in context that there are a number of things that we are doing in this government that we didn't put on our manifesto. I mean, you are aware that government is a continuum. So the number of things that you would project that would happen in your year of governing that you might not have thought of. I mean, like Agenda 111. Government did not desire to build Agenda 111 until COVID-19 came in and we realized that there was a lot of...
I hate to do that, but you can't compare the two.
Yeah, I know.
This came very early in the administration. In fact, the first Independence Day celebration or so was when he made this, he declared this, I think. And so this came very early, which means that it was something in his contemplation, even when he was campaigning. 2-3 months into his administration, he launched this. So you can't compare.
Exactly. Yes. So those are the rationales behind it. The controversies around the National Cathedral, I believe that a number of investigations are ongoing. As a government, we sought to build a National Cathedral that will become a Christian symbol, especially when Ghana, in the plurality of it, is very religious at both sides of Christianity and Islam. And seeing that the National Imam contributes and contributed to the National Cathedral clearly means that the National Cathedral is a symbol of religiosity and unity in this country. I mean, the location of the National Cathedral is very historic as opposed to other opinions that other persons may have. We have made sure that all compensations that is due and other state public offices that needs to be relocated, a number of them have all been relocated and they are already in operations. In no doubt, the issues that have arisen this week, you are aware that the National Cathedral always has a mandate to raise funds to build the temple that would be a place where it would have a lot of national events, including the swearing in of presidents and state funerals and a number of events that would be of importance to us as a country. The Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa this week brought out some documents that are already in the public domain as it relates to some monies that were given from the National Cathedral to JNS. Let me situate it. I've sent you some documents, and I'm sure that you might want to share. As at, I think it was as at August of 2022, there was a board meeting at the National Cathedral where they were in need of some funds. And I mean, through the benevolence, you are aware how, as the National Cathedral is being pledged by many people to support voluntarily, and then also they have an opportunity to go in for some financial assistance. The National Cathedral did go in for financial assistance of 2.6 million Ghana cedis from JNS, which is a private company. Now, in the manner in which the construction of the words are like as though JNS is a construction company. As at the time when JNS transferred 2.6 million Ghana cedis from their ADB bank account to the National Cathedral account, their closing balance was about 8.6 million Ghana cedis. So clearly, you would appreciate and understand the financial muscle of JNS as is, it goes about its own private endeavor. And then in September of 2022, when government released funds for the National Cathedral, they needed to repay back that financial assistance that they had received from JNS, and which is what the payment captured, 2.6 million back into the national, back from the National Cathedral into JNS. I think the arrow of error is where the National Cathedral just opposed to mention that JNS is a contractor. Basically, they should have.
But you call that an error? That's what it was to them, and so you call that an error today. But when they were altering the documents, they thought that was what it was, and they knew that was what it was.
No, JNS gave financial assistance to the National Cathedral. And I do not even want to state that they gave a loan, because the mandate of JNS does not operate a loan company.
Which is a major issue as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I do agree with that, which is why I'm situating the context of my wedding very well, that they gave a financial assistance.
But they say they gave them a loan. So see, here you are doing a rationalization after the fact. But when they were doing it in the heat of it, they were clear on what they were doing. They were giving the money or taking the money, or however you put it, from a contractor. And it was a loan. So here you are with the benefits of hindsight, now trying to clean up the mess in code, saying that, one, it wasn't a loan, it was some assistance. And number two, they shouldn't have said contractor, they should have said something else. But at the time, they were clear on what they were doing. And these are not mere men. These are very, accomplished men of God, we believe so much, put on this to make it work. So I'm not sure their choice of words or their intent, you could rephrase it or restructure it now.
No, well, Selorm, I think the context is for me to bring some clarity to the issues. That it was a financial assistance, which was given from JNS to the National Cathedral. And then the National Cathedral had to repay back the financial assistance that JNS had given. Following the allegations that has come from the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa and his petition of Shraj, you would see that the very Reverend Kusi Boateng, who is in the midst of this, has also brought a press statement and stated that he's going to avail himself to Shraj and bring his evidence to bear. I mean, no doubt in my mind that he would follow through with his statements in his letter and would be able to assist Shraj in Shraj's investigation. I'm concerned that a matter that has been sent to Shraj.
Just one of the documents you shared with me, the letter, not to cut it, but the letter, JNS letter to ADB. You are saying financial assistance, all of that, semantics. He says that, please, that's Reverend Kusi Boateng writing to an official of the Agric Bank. I just want to keep her name out of this for now. Please do transfer 2.6 million Ghana cedis from my corporate account, GNS Talent Limited, into the National Cathedral as a soft loan from me, counting on a usual prompt response. So this settles the matter.
No, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. Soft loan, financial assistance.
Semantics.
Yeah, I mean, of course. But I mean, the banking system and the words that they use and the context of it. I mean, we don't want to go into that. But I shared that document for you to be able to appreciate that the money originated from JNS into the National Cathedral. And the National Cathedral needed to be mindful to repay back that financial assistance. Now, the Reverend Kusi Boateng has stated that he is going to meet with Shraj. But I'm concerned that a matter that has been sent to Shraj, consistently, we are beginning to see that there are some documents that are being put in the public domain. That's a major concern for me. I think that the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa should spare the public of a number of documents that he's bringing out. If he has submitted all of those documents to Shraj, it should remain with Shraj for Shraj to have their investigations. And then thereafter, we would hear the responses that come from Shraj.
Won't you say that Okudzeto Ablakwa is justified in his alarm that these matters, we were not even clear on the wording or what exactly trying to do. But given that he's a member of parliament and representative of the people, when he sees stuff like this in a project like the National Cathedral, shouldn't he naturally raise the concerns and alarm he has raised?
Well, I cannot say whether he's justified or not. I mean, I think that Shraj is positioned to make that statement. I mean, I cannot say.
What I mean is raising the alarm, not conclusively determining the matter, because Shraj will do that, but raising the alarm. Because I hear a lot of government spokespersons, lampoon and lambast him that he shouldn't even have, because the explanations are clear, etc. But shouldn't he, as a representative of the people whose taxes are used to fund this project partly, shouldn't he have raised these issues, or shouldn't he be raising these issues?
No, I'm not in a situation to state that he shouldn't have raised it. There are 275 parliamentarians. Anyone can be able to raise an issue of public interest. And so I'm not in no doubt that he has a right to be able to raise it. I mean, you're aware in this country, everyone has a right and an opinion to bring a matter before the public domain. It's just the manner in which it is done. Which is the conversation that we are having here. I mean, the Honorable Kujato Ablakwa is a senior brother of mine, so I am in no doubt in my mind that he has his own rights to be able to exercise his civic responsibility to the Ghanaian people. That's not in doubt. But I'm stating that once a matter has gone to Shraj and you have presented supporting documents to Shraj, the public should be spared. To a number of extent, you continually bringing out, I think over this week I saw that he had brought out GRA registration documents and tax identification numbers. These are documents you've submitted to Shraj as supporting documents. It does not need to be in the public domain. If you wanted to have the public as an arbiter and a judge, then there was no need for you to go to Shraj. I mean, that's just the constellation in my mind. And then relation to Bishop Dr. Mills and his resignation from the board and allegations of some statements that he has made as it relates to some monies, 4 million, and how the board, the Cathedral arrived at this. I think that there's a role that board members play in organizations. I mean, clearly their mandate will be very different from the management of the organization, and I do not want to go into it too much. But
we'll actually go into it, because he makes a point about an executive council and the board of trustees, and even what he calls a governmental council. He thinks that we need to have an executive council which will be in charge of the day-to-day running of the organization, like what we have in the banks. You have management, etc. The board of trustees takes the position of a board, and then the governmental council will be made up of government people, etc., a few other people who can respond to certain political matters like we are seeing. Yeah. He's saying that the board is constrained because they don't have all the information. Major decisions in this arrangement were not taken by them. The cost of it, it was way above them, which is a problem. But now they are being forced to be responding to this, whilst the main takers of those decisions are quiet, and we are not really hearing from anybody.
I don't think anyone is forcing the board to respond to issues. I mean, board members are not supposed to be coming to the public domain to respond to issues. It's an issue for the management, which is why the National Cathedral brought out their response. I mean, this is not a response that will come from a board. It's a response that will come from the National Cathedral as it relates
but who signed it?
This was signed by the chairman of the board.
But you said it shouldn't be coming from the board.
I'm saying,
so exactly the point he was raising.
No, what I'm saying is that he's a member of the board.
But it's the board, not management per se.
Not a problem. I mean, no doubt of that. But what I'm trying to say is that he's a member of the board. I mean, board members and their meetings and their negotiations are at their level. You understand? We can go into the nitty-gritties of the allegations that he has raised. But in the midst of that, I mean, there's a lot of clarification of the issues that has been stated here by Apostle Professor Opokonina. It's just too lengthy to go through it. But clearly, you see that the situations have been situated very well, and the matter has come to rest in that regard.
Very well.
It's just primarily very important that even when you are a member of a board, you are mindful generally of some public discourses, because people can be able to take the conversations out of context, and I'm not sure that is what Bishop Dakiwad Mills is seeking to do. Bishop Dakiwad Mills is a very respected man of God. He's my father. He's blessed many people, built many cathedrals for the Lord around the world.
Exactly the point. So, if you admit that he's built,
clearly, yes,
he's one of the people who
clearly.
But that's fine. You are here with me. Let me go on Zoom and then speak to Dr. Yao Pebi, Global CEO of the Hard Group. he has authored, he has written quite a lengthy article on the subject. He titles it National Cathedral, Vulgar or Virtuous Venture. Doc, welcome to the program. Hello, Dr. Yao-Pebi. Do I have Dr. Yao-Pebi? All right, let me speak to.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Yao-Pebi is there. All right, Doc.
Yes.
Interesting article you've written, National Cathedral, Vulgar or Virtuous. For those who have not had the opportunity to read this, of course, it's on citinewsroom.com. Can you answer this question you pose yourself to us? National Cathedral, vulgar or virtuous venture, given all the matters we have seen this week and the weeks before?
Good question. Thanks for having me on air. This whole National Cathedral thing has taken many of us through various emotions. When I first wrote that article, that was actually in August 2017, which is almost 4 or 5 years ago. And then I followed up, again, it's on Citi as well, it's on Joy as well. I followed up with a trilogy in March, during the pandemic, March of 2020, establishing very potent reasons why this cathedral project could be worth our while and given a chance. But first, let me bring greetings to our listeners. And in the interest of full disclosure, say this. Number one, I am a Bible-believing, Jesus-following, Spirit-filled African Christian. Number two, I currently have no political membership of any political party, just a citizen who loves Ghana, and I help both major parties whenever they need help. And thirdly, I'm speaking as a missiologist and a leadership scholar, and I think it's very clear, important that I make that clear. So when I wrote that article, initially, when I heard about this cathedral, I wasn't excited about it. Number one, I thought, oh yeah, here we go again, these politicians looking for another opportunity to make a 10% kickback and, route monies and all of that. That's kind of the things people are suspecting now. I'll say suspecting now. Secondly, I thought, oh my goodness, can we afford it? Is this prudent to do this? Another time, Russia hadn't even happened, Russia, Ukraine. At that time, we were not even in COVID-19 situation. But I thought, well, in terms of poverty levels, is this something we can sustain? But thirdly, and maybe most importantly, I was afraid we might go the path of Europe, where there was such a boom in Christendom and there's such a emphasis on building physical structures, cathedrals which today have been turned into pubs and even mosques and all kinds of things, residences, while the spirituality of the people is dying. And of course, we have Yamoussoukro. I lived in Cote d'Ivoire for a year. I was working as a doctor there with the United Nations, as a peacekeeper actually, and realized, beautiful sanctuary, but almost a white elephant. And the papacy itself, when this was commissioned in 1990, was so concerned about the opulence, the magnificence of it, that they said, Pope John Paul at that time said, you know what, I will come and commission this if you built a hospital and as an attachment. Well, it's been 32 years now, we haven't seen that hospital built. So these were some of the things that were going on in my mind, and I was wondering, is this a vulgar venture, or is it a virtuous venture? And like I said, later on, I followed up with a trilogy saying that let's give this a chance. This could be a really virtuous venture, and I could tell you why. But the thing is this: this is a very nuanced thing. It is very nuanced because number one, the president is not a king. He's not a sovereign, right? So he can't just dream something and say, this is my fiat, or this is my decree. Number one, the president is not a king. Number two, we don't live in a theocracy, right? This is a democracy. And so we don't expect things to just go one way or people not to oppose and etc. And although I must say that in a lot of ways, we also a pseudo-secular state because we say we're secular, but our national anthem begins with God. God bless our homeland Ghana, our national pledge, so help me God. We swear people in, with the Bible, of course, the Quran and all of that. But it's still not a theocracy. Thirdly, public-private partnership can get very murky. it's a very tricky dance, and that is what is happening here. So that, for example, I mean, should a private entity loan a government project money? I mean, think about it, you know, and then of course things are hard. So because things are hard, this is coloring the entire conversation. You know, as if that is not enough, let me be very blunt here. The president hasn't shown great leadership in terms of casting vision for this and galvanizing the people. You know, that is a function of leadership, and I speak as a leadership scholar, to cast vision creatively, clearly, compellingly, and galvanize the people. It seems like he's going on a long walk, because they say if leadership is about influencing people, and so if you turn around and realize nobody is following, then you are taking a long walk.
But Doc, what else should a president do about casting the vision, you know, compellingly and creatively and all of that, galvanizing people around it? What else should he do? We've seen the president visit Washington, you know, leading fundraising projects everywhere he goes. He talks about it. I mean, trying to bring the people to it. The reason why he wants to build it. I'm not sure what else he should be doing, because he's tried to show leadership. I mean, raising money, talking about it, ensuring that the people buy into their vision, etc.
Yes.
I'm wondering what else.
It's a good question, and apart from the competence that is required, all right, in casting vision and influencing people, galvanizing people, there's also in leadership there's a triad, right? There's a competence part, and so you're asking what can he do? Yes, I can give a couple of suggestions what he can do, but secondly, there's a character component, a component of trust. All right, so the least the government could do would be a government that can be trusted to manage the economy, you know, properly, and not to have all these scandals, etc. Those are some of the things he can do. I mean, for example, ask people, Kusi, send a message and say, Kusi, step aside. I don't know what the full thing is. Step aside while this is investigated. Then people have trust in the president that not only does he have a compelling vision, but guess what? He has the character, the trust to back it. People are not happy with the way economy has been managed. If the economy was managed properly, perhaps people will give this a chance. All right. So it's a triad. It's a character, a competence matter. How do you cast vision, compellingly, clearly, and all of that? It's a character matter, a matter of trust, and trust is the foundation of leadership. Once people don't trust the government, nothing would work. That is just it. And in terms of competence, even. I have seen that this government has not been very emotionally intelligent in many of the decisions they've made, whether it's e-levy, and I speak again as a scholar. You tell me, are people excited about the Cathedral project? No, not even Christians, including some people, prominent Christians on your station. So we have work to do, all right? And then just you're asking what else can he do? It's consultation. There's a difference between speaking to people, speaking at people, and having conversation with people. I haven't seen conversation. It's the same thing with the domestic debt, you know, exchange. There's not been that conversation. People are not buying into it. Not much consultation, not much conversation. People are not buying into it. I think it's become, you know, symptomatic, you know, of the government. You know, and then there's the process itself. You know, where I would say there's been poor communication, there's been poor governance. Some of the things you just mentioned are in governance 101, you know, and no accountability, just too much opacity, you know, around the project. And so no wonder it's not working. So some of the things some of us feared at the beginning, and people said, I don't believe these politicians, this is just a way to launder money, etc. I'm afraid those things are coming to overshadow what could really be a very virtuous project. And later I can give you, people can read my articles, but I can also give you some very potent reasons why this could really be a virtuous project, but right now it's caught in murky stuff.
Very well. I'll come back to you again. Franklin, interesting points there. Did all of this come to you as a surprise that the board of the National Cathedral, for example, is been embroiled in its own internal difficulties? Bishop Dag, now Bishop or Reverend Kusi Boateng, the alleged self-dealing, etc., and now the decision of Ablakwa to go to Shraj to get this investigated. Did all of this come to you as a surprise?
Well, the bit about the self-dealing was a bit extreme, if it is true. But I'm not entirely, should I say, surprised that this cathedral project has been embroiled in this constant, if you like, shenanigans, and I worry that the president doesn't seem to realize that his pet project is unfortunately becoming a laughing stock, really. So, look, a lot has been said, really, and for me, I think we wasted precious land, precious investments that have been sunk in already. To erect trying to erect an edifice that unfortunately may not even possess the required aesthetics, or the should I call it architecture, to be called the proper national cathedral. So the cathedral has no legacy to follow.
No, how do you mean that it may not have the proper aesthetics to be called a national cathedral? What do you mean by that?
Well, there's been, if you realize, even the Yapebi has related some examples for you when he was talking about what the proper cathedral will probably constitute. And don't forget, Imani, we did a whole publication on a number of cathedrals across the world that could pass for proper cathedrals. And this cathedral, unfortunately, maybe with the exception of the Bible Museum, which in itself is a huge undertaking, because what exactly would distinguish it as a proper Bible museum? Is it that you're going to look for some of the edicts, some of the original, did I say, epithet that constituted the Bible, or any historical connection to the original Bible itself? Those kinds of things would constitute some rarity, which people would be willing to pay thousands of dollars from any part of the world to come and actually visit the Bible Museum. But otherwise, every other part of the cathedral, unfortunately, is not distinctly unique. In fact, I dare say that some of our shrines probably have much more importance than the cathedral, because they have been famous for some historical connections, So for this cathedral,
but is that not what the cathedral is supposed to do? The Bible Museum, the historical, all of that, that's what the cathedral is supposed to do.
Yeah, but cathedrals are famed, like I said, for some historical connections. The cathedral that got burnt in France, right? Notre Dame has very rich collections. Historical connection to Jesus Christ, right? So and all over, there are so many cathedrals that have some distinctive, if you like, history to it. As I'm saying, that this cathedral is just a large building project with no history, with no legacy, and unfortunately has been superintended on a rather discordant corporate structure. I'm not surprised that the kinds of troubles it's going through right now would not cease. And for me, I actually worry. Probably I shouldn't be worried. I should actually be happy that this cathedral will never be built by 2024. Will not be built by 2024, unless of course some lottery is in the works, and maybe some other forms of money which may not be spiritual.
They could source for loans, which I understand is one of the considerations. They could source for loans and build it in a short time. So 2024, not entirely out of the question.
If you are generous, what should I call it, a creditor, then you probably would be in the business of giving these kinds of loans. I don't know how it's going to be paid back, but unfortunately, I wouldn't be in that business even if I had a lot of money. So maybe they know something we don't know. But given the permutations, the financial analysis that have been made, and don't forget the finances kept changing from 250 to about 350 to now 400 million, probably even more. I'm not entirely sure that if I were in the business of giving money to serious business entities, I'll be considerate of the Cathedral project. Well, maybe, of course, I may be imbued by the love for God, and then maybe I may decide that I'll give it at 0 interest rates. Maybe they could also ask the Muslim Arabic friends, who normally would give loans without interest rates. If they see the project in that light, why not? I'm sure that could happen. But speaking specifically, given the modalities that I know that this cathedral project is supposed to be built upon, I'm not entirely sure it can be finished within the period, by 2024.
Very well. Dr. Pebby has to leave. Let me take a few comments from him before I come back to the studio. Doc, a lot appears to be happening, but what is also clear is that this cathedral must be built and will be built, in the words of the president. So it doesn't appear that there's going to be any compromise. It appears like a one-way street. It will be done. What can we do to ensure that this is done in a manner that will be all-encompassing, that will draw all of us together, that will reduce or minimize the controversies? What can we do? Solutions time.
Great. I'm very happy to share my thoughts on some solutions. But just before that, let me say that I love what Franklin said, but I disagree in terms of the significance of the building. I told you there is some virtue in it. I'll ask people to go and read on your website those articles, because what won me, number one, was the fact that, of course, the building itself is designed in a very African way, with African Christianity as a thing, because a lot of people may not know our continent was called dark 100 years ago. But now, since 2018, Africa has been the continent with the most Christians in the world. It is a very significant thing. And we are coming to our own because we are molding Christianity after our own culture. So I think there is significance there. There's also, apart from infrastructure and in terms of its attractiveness and earning income as a tourist site and all of that, there is also the fact that there's a cathedral as convener. So public discourse, religious conversations, all of that. There are very good reasons. Of course, the country's ceremonial core, right? Because if I heard the architect right, we have the People's Place, basically the National Theatre, the Conference Center. We have People's Representatives Place, Parliament, State House. We have the place for our heroes, the cemetery right there, Osu Cemetery, the military cemetery. But we have no place for the people's faith. And we are a religious people. Theologians have made it clear, Africans are just religious people. That's what we are. All right. So I think there are positives, there are real pluses, and I think that, and again, that's why I say I have actually been able to convince many people about the pluses for this thing who have totally given up on it. Because again, I don't think communication has been clear enough, vision has been cast strongly and compellingly enough. And don't forget, we are building a nation here. Right? Because people keep saying, what about hospitals? We need hospitals. Yes, we need hospitals. Now we have a stadium. Yes, we need schools. We have a parliament building. Because we are building a nation, not just an eclectic collection of utilities and utilitarian facilities. So I encourage people to go ahead and read all the 10 or so reasons I give why this could be a really virtuous thing if it's done properly. So what are we going to do going forward? Well, number one, these are my suggestions, and I'm sorry that I had to leave in about 5 minutes. I had a prior commitment. We haven't shown either the leadership competence, character, or compassion, the care to successfully build this edifice to the glory of God and for the blessing of our people, and indeed for the blessing of nations. So these are my suggestions. Number one, let's stop. Stop. Let's stop work. This time it's not even writing on the building. This is we ourselves as Ghanaian people saying stop work. Let's stop. Number one. Number two, let's audit. There's nothing to hide. What's our problem? Let's audit. This is not hard to do. Just get any of the big four, KPMG, PwC, Price, Deloitte, whoever, to audit this thing, and then see what comes out of it and take proper actions as a result. Audit from the Secretariat all the way to JNS. Just audit. Number three, let's have conversations and debate. Conversations and debates. even if people don't agree, people will be in a better position to support when they know they've been heard. As it is now, it's like we're pushing this down people's throats. All right. If we have enough conversations and even debates, I believe we'll have a groundswell. People will catch it. People will, will get it, and people will, even if they don't agree, they know they've been heard. Number 4, if we decide to move forward based on the audits, based on the conversations and debate, etc., I would say that we should give ourselves time. That's part of the challenge. This does not have to be finished by 2024. If it is not Nana Ado's cathedral, but the people of Ghana's cathedral, if it is not for Nana Ado, Honorable President Kufuor, but for Ghana, then we are not in a hurry. And the next president, whether he's MPP, NDC, or XYZ, must bear the same vision that we are building this as a Ghanaian people for the glory of the Most High God. And so we don't have to think about, and that, you see, when we are not in a hurry, you can think properly, you can follow due process, you can act in a godly manner. And rush always brings trouble. All right, so we give ourselves even the next 2 terms, maybe even the next 3 terms. It's fine. One day it will be done, and we'll all rejoice and say, glory to God. Number 5, transparency, transparency, transparency. Look, the Bible says, 1 John 1:5, this is the message we have heard from him and declared to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. At all. Some corporations have more transparency than we are seeing from a religious project, and that really worries me because I love the people that are leading this. Anti-Journalists and Opoko United are my people, right? But there's too much darkness shrouded around the God of light. It cannot be. In 1 Kings 12:15, there's a building project there, and it's very interesting. The text in verse 15, it says, this is 1 Kings 12. They did not require accounting from those who gave money to the workers, because they acted with complete honesty. Complete honesty. We need transparency much more than we have seen. All right. My last but one point: let God's people build God's church. Government has done well to give the land, and it was the initial thing that we just give the land and seed capital, and then this thing kept expanding, kept getting octopus legs. Let's just stop it, please. All right. You have given the land, you have given some seed money, what is it? Don't give a dime anymore from the taxpayers' money. Let the people of God in Ghana say, we are going to build, like Nehemiah. The Lord our God will prosper us, therefore his people will arise and build. Even offering services. Great cathedrals that have been built, people have offered their services. Carpenters will come, masons will come. I, for example, think it was totally wrong even to pay the architect. The architect should say, I love Ghana, with this we're building a cathedral for God. I've seen a lot of money being transferred to him. People must do this because we are doing this for God. And the last point is that we must be as passionate about our software as we are about this hardware. In other words, our values, our thinking as a people. There's so much corruption, and yet we want to build a cathedral. There's so much hunger and poverty, and yet we want to put up infrastructure. What God requires is not so much buildings, but that our bodies will be his temple, that our behavior will reflect his glory. So as we're excited about the hardware, I pray that we'll work on our lives, on our integrity, on our values, on our behaviors, on our attitudes, and also disciple the systems, that the systems in Ghana will reflect a country that says it believes in God Most High. I think that this will put us in good stead and hopefully erase the painful and bitter memories that this would otherwise bring us.
We were grateful. Very thoughtful suggestions there. One, let's stop work. Let's audit the work done so far. Let's have conversations and debates. Let's give ourselves time. We don't need to complete this in 4 years. And then let's ensure greater transparency. Very interesting suggestions or recommendations from Dr. Yapebi. Doc, we were grateful for your time, and we hope we'll make more time to discuss these issues. Very, very grateful for your time. This is a big issue coming to you live from our studios, 97.3 Citi FM. We want to take a short break. When we return, we will get into more details of the discussion. We are looking at the National Cathedral a construction of a house of God shrouded in untruth and deceit. We will come back soon and continue. Don't go away.
My name is Gina, and this salon is where I work.
Good morning. Hey, good morning. You've already met your new colleague, have you?
Who was this Kujubi? He fell from the sky.
I'm so glad there's a man amongst you. You ladies gossip too much. Hey, girls.
Today, Madam came in with a hot, sexy guy. And they were doing lobby.
Hey. Did Madam think men don't gossip?
The grapevine. Nice one.
I've noticed a massive decline in our daily proceeds.
I suggest we fast and pray. The spirit, hey, Baga, told me today that I will see a man in this salon.
He said his wife is dead?
Yes, she was sick.
Hey, what sickness? Aite, it is your mother that will get leukemia. It is your mother.
I don't like what you are doing at all.
Hey, you want to fight?
Showing every Wednesday.
The Heritage Caravan 2023 is powered by Citi TV with support from Citi FM and proudly sponsored by Holland Ghana, the European Union, Malta Guinness, and Ebony Condoms.
You're welcome back to The Big Issue. Very big welcome to our TV viewers. This is the big issue. The matters we're discussing this morning include the National Cathedral, and over the week there's been a lot of controversy about a certain company's involvement with the National Cathedral, the GNS Talent. What was the full name itself? There's a company, GNS Talent Development, or so. I'll get to the full name, and how it's supposedly loaned some money to the National Cathedral. National Cathedral paid back. A member of Parliament for Nobdong, Okujeto Ablakwa, thinks that there are elements of conflict of interest because the secretary to the board is inextricably connected to that company. Indeed, that company is run by his spiritual son and junior pastor, and that, was quite fishy for the member of Parliament, and a few other things he raised, including the fact that the secretary to the board of trustees of the Cathedral, who is the subject of, which has been the subject of many discussions, appears to have had two names, two dates of birth, two different sets of mothers, and a whole lot. And he has presented all of that to the Shrine for Shrine to make a determination. In fact, he had two things and a whole lot. All those documents have been submitted to Shrine. We don't know the veracity of them. Shrine is a body to deal with matters like this when it comes to public officials. And indeed, Reverend Kusi Boateng is a public official because he serves on a public board. So we are looking at all of that, seeing whether the cathedral itself, what can be done about it. We just finished speaking to Dr. Yalpebi, who has made some interesting recommendations. He thinks that we should stop work on the project. We should stop work. Indeed, work has actually stopped for all we hear. We hear since March of last year. Not much has been done on the ground. But he said we should stop work, and that means we should stop work in our minds and on the ground. We should audit the project so far. He thinks that when we do that, it will repose confidence, people's confidence in the project. Number three, he says that we should have conversations and debates about it. Not everybody will agree about everything, but at least there would have been a conversation and would have coalesced around the major areas. And then let's give ourselves time. We don't need to finish this cathedral in 4 years or in 8 years. Many cathedrals across the world have been built in 80 years, some in 200 years. Ghana, being the Black South Africa, doesn't need to build this in 4 years or even in 8 years. And he thinks that we should ensure there's greater transparency. These are quite interesting things he has raised. Franklin Kujo is on the line. I have in studio Pagre Bwachidankwa, who is the spokesperson on security, government spokesperson on security and governance. Roxanne Nelson Dafama, member of parliament, NDC ticket, Sadai, is still on his way. He will join us soon. And Dr. Yapeb, who we just spoke to before the break, is the global CEO of the HAD Group, a very important group which does a lot in human development, etc. And Yapebi has been a super coach, personal and leadership coach. I benefited from his expertise when I was in school. All right, so that is the matter on the table. We also look at the state of the domestic debt exchange. What form should government consultations take? If you recall, government eventually met the individual bondholders group, this week. They agreed to set up a joint committee to look at the issues. We want to ask what form the consultations will take. The individual bondholders, they don't want to be part of it. They should be exempted. Their money is just below 10 billion. And they think government can find resources even from the budget. They can cut down on expenditure and a few other things to be able to make up for that part of the pie. Government doesn't really agree or entirely agree. A committee has been set to look at all of that and we want to ask how it's going to work. So, Palgrave is in the studio with interesting points we've heard so far. But what is government's contribution to the project really? From the beginning, we were told that government will provide the land, which it has done, and government will provide seed money. Now, it appears the seed money keeps jumping because 100 million, the project we understand was valued at or was going to cost 100 million, went to 250 million, we had $350 million, we are hearing $400 million, we don't know what we will hear tomorrow. What is government's contribution, the quantum of the seed money? Did government know from the beginning that I'm giving X amount, or the seed money keeps changing as the project costs keep changing? What is government's contribution apart from the land?
Selorm, so at the very beginning of the building of the National Cathedral, government said we'll do the land, which we have fulfilled. Government said we'll provide the Secretariat, which we have. Government also said we'll provide seed money. Now, Selorm, it's interesting, really, to see that government has committed overwhelmingly to the building of the National Cathedral.
Over 300 million cedis.
Government has committed itself overwhelmingly to support the building of the National Cathedral.
But was that an initial plan? So this overwhelming support you're talking about constitutes the seed money?
Government said we'll give seed money. There's a total cost for the National Cathedral. You are aware of the total cost of the National Cathedral. Government has given some part of it as seed money to the building of the National Cathedral. I raised the points of Dr. Yapebi's assertion, the 7 cardinal points he has raised that government should listen to. I'm certain that we would adhere to some of the things that he has raised here. But I think that government is not far away from a lot of the implementations of the things that Dr. Yapebi has said.
Work? Have we stopped work? Are we stopping work? Work so practically has stopped, but that wasn't. It wasn't voluntary. It was out of necessity.
No, yes, but then you see, government is very, very holistic. I mean, the value chain of government and the basket of government is very big. So audit is not a problem. There's always audit that happens.
Will we hear the president in the next few days say, I've directed that the work on the cathedral site should stop, and I'm directing an audit or calling for an audit into the work so far, monies that have come from government? The audit will actually review what government doesn't want us to know. How much government has sunk into this project. You are not able to tell me what the seed money is. We don't know. And these are the issues, a lot of opacity.
No, Selorm, you see, I would disagree a little bit with Dr. Pebi when he says that the president has not shown leadership. I think that for him as a scholar of leadership and for all of us as students of leadership, President Adonoo Akufo-Addo has shown extreme leadership as it relates to a number of projects that he's doing in country. The president has representatives at various levels, which is why he has appointed ministers. The president had people that...
No, in respect of this project.
No, yes, I mean, in respect of this project, President Adonoo Akufo-Addo has shown extreme leadership. I mean, I don't know what else Dr. Yapebi would want the president to do in his quest to show leadership as it relates to the National Cathedral. The president has shown extreme leadership, and I think that I would want to exonerate the president from that statement of not showing leadership. President Adonoo Akufo-Addo has continually shown leadership in all of his projects, clearly, and he's been continually updated on all projects that are ongoing. Audits. I mean, you are aware that all public offices are audited on a regular basis. There are internal auditing scheme, and then there are also external auditing scheme, and then there's a government auditing scheme. I mean, the National Cathedral definitely has gone through a number of audits. The documents and the books. 2017
to now, we can point to any audit. Can we point to any audit that has been done in respect of the cathedral?
All public, all public institutions go through audits.
We know, but you know, sometimes it takes a number of years because it's just one auditor general.
Yes,
office.
but
you also know that there are times that special audits are ordered into things.
Absolutely,
that's the kind of thing I think he's talking about.
No, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Government does not have a problem auditing the National Cathedral. I need to state that.
But given the controversies we are seeing now, apart it's left. It's moved from the concept now to money. You know, this money is moved from here to here now into private. It's not just from contingency vote as we were taught by Kenneth Urata some weeks ago. Now it's moving between the public office of the National Cathedral to a private entity and back, that back and forth. We need to investigate that. And the audit will deal with those.
It's not a problem. And I'm saying that government does not have a problem with having the National Cathedral audited.
But will government do it?
Government does not have a problem with having the National Cathedral audited. Government does not have a problem at all. Dr. Yapebi talks about debate and conversations. Selorm, since the National Cathedral construction began, it's been one of the most debated projects of President Adonoo Akufo-Addo. We've had various conversations. I recall in my Bible studies time when we were told that Christ Jesus, together with his earthly mother and earthly father, had to run into Africa to a country called Egypt. There is strong significance for the building of a national cathedral, especially for the African continent and how we can situate our African Christianity. And so for debate and conversations, I think that we've had various conversations and debates, and we would continue to have various conversations and debates for people to understand and have clarity and context. And you see, the building of God's house almost always has conversations. Even when you are building God's house from a local assembly, there are always conversations that you would have for the people to contribute to it. So government is having conversations with this. Dr. Poibi says...
But the conversations appear, so people are talking, but people too are working. So, yeah, you can say what you want to say, you can have your debate, but what I think and what I know is what I'm doing. So the conversations are being had, but the conversations are not influencing the decision making. That's the key point, really.
No, I do not think that the conversations are not influencing. Now, you see, the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa has sent a petition to Shraj. Now, Shraj would give a determination. Now, I'm looking at the end result of what Shraj will bring out. I mean, whatever determination they bring out would influence every single thing that is happening at the National Cathedral. And so there is no way that all the conversations we are having does not influence anything in leadership. I mean, we are not stuck in our mind as a government that we are going to push through the thread with a needle, however difficult it is, regardless of the conversations people are having around.
But that's what it appears.
That is not what it is.
The president said the cathedral will be built. Emphasis, will be built.
Not a problem. In the context of the president's statement that the cathedral will be built, of a truth, the cathedral will be built. Wouldn't the cathedral be built?
Irrespective of what people
No,
think.
that is not what he said. He didn't give a caveat that the cathedral will be built irrespective of what people are saying. The president said the cathedral will be built. So wouldn't the cathedral be built?
I do not know. Given the controversies, I do not know. I don't know what will come up. I don't know what will be on earth later.
Selorm, the cathedral will be built In President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's tenure, the cathedral...
That's 2 years.
Not a problem. The cathedral will be built even when MPP goes and then another MPP government takes over on the 7th of January 2025, the cathedral will be built. Wouldn't the cathedral be built? Yes, the cathedral will be built. So if the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo says that the cathedral will be built, of a truth, the cathedral will be built. He did not make that statement in relation that regardless of what people are saying, the cathedral will be built. That's not what he said. He said the cathedral will be built. And so whether the cathedral will be built in 2023, 2024, 2025, the cathedral will be built. As long as we have a land given by government, as long as we have seed capital given by government, as long as we have given a secretariat for government, by government to the public for the cathedral will be built. If we don't finish it in our lifetime, our children will come and finish the cathedral. So the cathedral will be built.
So what do you make of this? Of course, you must put timelines to things. And we know about smart, specific, blah, 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 but most importantly, the fact that it must have timelines and those timelines must be realistic. Building this in 4 years or building this before the president leaves office, you think that's a feasible proposition as has been touted and as has been said that will happen?
Selorm, I'm not an architect. Neither am I a contractor.
But you have common sense.
Yeah, I do.
You have common sense.
Of course. I do have common sense. I mean, you see, there are various facets within which we can have the conversations around the completion of the cathedral. You understand? I'm mindful to be able to put out a statement that the cathedral will be completed or not completed before 2024. I'm minded to say that.
But what's the vision? The vision is to build it before the president leaves.
No, the vision is to build a national cathedral. The vision is not to build a national cathedral before the president leaves.
No. What you're telling us today is very different from what we've been told over the weeks.
The vision is that government is building a national cathedral. And you are aware, government is time-bound. I mean, you have your first 4 years. If you do well, the Ghanaian people redeem and vote for you again, which they did in 2020 general election, rejected another opposition party, and then voted us into power. And we are governing for an extra 4 years. And then in that 4 years, when we are done, we go into a major election. Should the Ghanaian people vote for us again, the MPP political party remains in power 7th of January 2025. So clearly, the cathedral is a building of the Lord for the Ghanaian people, and it can be completed. It's time bound. I mean, it's very difficult, really, Selorm, to put a time bound because you are raising funds for the building of this cathedral. I mean, so you are at the mercy of people that are giving. And you are aware of all the global exchange rates and inflation and how that would impact your materials that you are bringing in. I think that, to be fair, the president has stated that this cathedral will be built. Whether during his tenure, whether after his tenure, it's still on record that the cathedral will be built. Dr. Alpebi says that we should give time. Absolutely. No one is in a rush in completing all of the projects that we have begun. The Ghanaian people have given us a mandate. We as a government are making sure that we are finishing those mandates. Those that we can complete within our tenure. There's not been a single government, as far as my mind would recall, that has completed all projects that they have begun from the time they were sworn in as government to the time they handed over. Every single government inherits projects. And so clearly, I mean, no doubt in my mind that the next MPP government on the 7th of January 2025 would inherit projects from President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's government. So we'll give time. Transparency. Now, I think that even with the nature within which we practice our democracy, there's been a lot of transparency with a number of our public institutions. We set up RTI, which is where if people want reliable information, you can always go and request for it. And so there's greater transparency in a number of these issues.
So, for example, here we are around the table, not even sure of how much government has committed to this project. That is the transparency we're talking about. We are not even sure the quantum of the money government calls seed money being devoted to this. We don't know. That is the transparency we are talking about. So and quite a number of things. How much, for example, the contractors on the project are being paid. We read from Bishop Dag's email that they are paid about $40,000 a month, and we don't know. And people want to know. We are in a tight economic situation. People are asking questions. And not everybody must apply to the RTI office for these information. And you are building the house for God. And you are just supporting with some amount of money. Bulk of that money, we believe, will be coming from the churches and individuals. If I do not trust how you are using the money, even your own money, how can you convince me to support this? So I think that the transparency must be deepened, and that is what will trigger or will make people give to the project. And that, because we don't know how much the project costs. We only hear it costs $400 million. We don't know how much government has given to. We don't know how much is left. We don't even know how government intends to raise the money. Bishop Dag raises in his letter that there was a conversation about going for loan to finish the project. Loan to finish the project. And that is a difficult. We don't know all of this. If I'm to ask you how much has been raised from fundraising, etc., I'm not sure you know. But you should even know. We should know. How do we? So that is the transparency.
Selorm, it's not a problem. I'll find those figures.
So I'm saying that we should know. It's not something you should go and look for.
I would get the documents and bring it to the public domain.
So we can trust the word for it. We're talking about transparency.
Yes, very much. Dr. Pebi, on his 6th point, says that let God's people build God's temple. Clearly, the Ghanaian people is almost 90% religious from both sides of the equation, Christianity and Islam. So definitely these are God's people that are building God's temple. I'm not sure is any other person that is outside of God's terrain, as we put it. So God's temple is being built by God's people. Both Muslims and Christians. I was very excited when the National Chief Imam gave a donation to the National Cathedral, which means that God's people are building God's temple. And so, and then I think that the final thing is he talks about the passionate values and hardware and all of that, and the fact that Ghana is not a theocracy but a democracy. Yes, we understand that, but in the midst of our enshrinedness in our democracy, there is a strong embedded thrust of our belief in a supreme being. So under the democracy, it's an underpinning of a carpet of theocracy, which we don't rule out at all. But clearly, the president in his mind is not ruling this country through the mindset of how other people would see that it is done. It's a democratic country, and we are abiding by the laws and regulations of this country. And we're sure that we'll do the mandate of what the Ghanaian people want.
Franklin, interesting points raised by Pebi, and interesting responses given by Palgrave. I don't know where you stand on this. I don't know whether from your investigation and as you've done in many things, you've been able to dig up how much government has sunk into this project, and whether you think that government has been transparent enough in this. Quite a number of things I've raised.
Well, I think the jury is still out there. We haven't, of course, we've been following the conversation Okudzeto and co have been leading, and it's rather sufficient for us to come to the conclusion that unfortunately the project is dogged with a lot of inconsistency when it comes to funding it. So maybe that's where we'll just end it until my good brother in the studio provides us the information he says he has or he's going to find. You know, one of the things that is being bandied about is how unique Ghanaian Christianity or African Christianity is, to the extent that it should merit a national cathedral. I don't know what is sufficiently unique about the Ghanaian or African Christian. Is it the way they worship, or is it the way they read the Bible? If it is the way we worship, that debate has long been settled. I recall the Catholic Church decided to do something they call inculturation, where we in culture what they call the way we worship, the way we dance and worship in the Catholic Church changed drastically for most missions, right? And so that was in culture. I don't know whether, as I said, the special reading of the Bible is what will make it distinct. I submit again that there isn't sufficient analysis to be garnered, or there isn't sufficient research to be garnered to the point that we can call this a unique national cathedral. But having said that, look, there are already 40 national Orthodox cathedrals that we have in this country. In fact, we have over close to 120 cathedral-scale Christian worship centers in the country already. in fact, if we really want Christian believers, as in the Christian community, to actually see this project as their own, then they might as well be contributing to it. Look, in Nigeria, in 1989, they started the National Ecumenical Center, and most of the money, or almost all the money, came from the Christian community. So that by 2004, they have raised close to 3 billion naira, which was close to $23 million from the project. Obasanjo, who was president at the time, acted as a mere treasurer, and he didn't pump public funds into the project. So there must be that ownership as well, as Dr. Yaupebi has suggested. There should be that ownership. And if the Christian community, whose board members, representatives, some board members of this cathedral already are questioning the dealings of the entire project, then it tells you that there's a lot of diffidence already from the larger Kenyan Christian community in this project. I still maintain that this project was not needed in the first place to be called the National Cathedral, and then actually invested in the state, so that the state will be responsible indirectly by what I call wasting public funds in this project.
I see. All right. Honorable Roxanne Dafamapo, you and your colleagues appear to be leading the charge against the building of the National Cathedral. Of course, I've also heard you guys say that it's not as if you are against the building of the National Cathedral. You just want things done a certain way. Fair. Now, the latest is that you have led your team, I mean, Okujeto Ablakwa, yourself, your lawyer, other minority members, to petition Sraj on matters of conflict of interest against a member of the board or a secretary of the board to the board of trustees of the cathedral. People think that you might have spoken too early because the information you had was not conclusive enough for you to take this step. So, for example, jumping to say that the company, or the GNS company, got money it did not deserve, or it's not done any work and got money, was not true, because it's been established, at least for now, from documents made available, that the National Cathedral Secretariat requested some money from the body, and the body gave the money, and that money was paid back. So it would have been, or it's wrong to say that money has been given without any work done, creating an impression as if the guys on the board were just dishing money to themselves, etc. What do you say to all of this?
Salam, thank you. Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Pogrill, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Senior.
Happy New Year to all my constituents in Peki, Balima, Tongo, and Bove, and your viewers. You see, Pogrill, don't let the communication be that there are some Ghanaians or the minority against the building of a cathedral.
Not at all.
Don't let the communication be like that. Let the nation decide to build a cathedral any day. That is fine. But any expenditure on the cathedral, we will interrogate it. We want value for money. So let people understand the issues. Because it's the building of a cathedral, we should interrogate how much is going to it. Go to the cathedral site and see the state of affairs. Vis-a-vis the expenditure of 339 million Ghana cedis, the equivalent of nearly $59 million. And see whether we have value for money. That is the issue. Now, in interrogating this issue, Salom, a lot of things have been uncovered, including the seat of parliament. Yes. So we'll take these matters methodically. What happened? We were told by the president that this cathedral was a $100 million equivalent project. And it was a project that he wants to lead, but as a private venture. And that we'll source for funding from private sources to undertake it. It was his personal pledge to God to build it if he were made a president. That's fine. But somehow, he found space in his State of the Nation's address first. Then, he found space in his budget. Then in that budget, it was indicated that they were supporting that project with some seed money. Yes, government makes donations, so it's okay. Then more money began to be pumped into it. Then the value of the project kept changing from $100 million project to a $180 million project to a $250 million. Now it is a $400 million project. What were the issues? A motion of censure was filed against the finance minister. And so allegations were made. In responding to these allegations, he filed a 98-paragraph response. As part of that 98-paragraph response, he annexed certain documents. Because as part of that response was a response in respect of how much the state had expended on the National Cathedral project. So he provided some answer and supported it with documents. In that document, he told us the exact amount of money the state had expended, including payment for consultancy fees and all, date by date, totaling 339 million Ghana cedis, equivalent of 58.7 or so million dollars. Okay. Then we further asked the National Cathedral to provide documents. Because during the budget hearing, the National Cathedral project had miraculously been moved from under the office of the president to its original place of existence under the Ministry of Tourism. Because the National Cathedral, the entity owning the National Cathedral project, was set up by the Museums and Monuments Board. And the Museums and Monuments Board is an agency under the Ministry of Tourism. So it came before Trade, the Trade and Tourism Committee. So we went into their budget, the budget of Museums and Monuments Board. Then the issue of expenditure of the National Cathedral came up. Then we asked for further documents, and this was the documents they brought to the Trades Committee of Parliament. In this document, National Cathedral is saying they have spent 225 million Ghana cedis, 225.9 million Ghana cedis, and not the 339 million the finance minister had already provided by way of documents indicating payments to Parliament. So there was a missing link.
What was their figure again?
Their figure is 225 million.
225 million.
225.9 million.
Which is almost 100 million difference.
Thank you. No, it's
111 thereabout.
No, yes, 111
thereabout,
million.
Yes. Because government said, or Ken said 339, and they said 225.
And Ken provided dates, because he gave dates. He said 7th June 2019, they paid $89,000 to the consultant, David Ajayi and Co. 5th March 2021, they paid $13.97 million. 10th February 2021, they paid $5.5 million. 29th October 2021, they paid $25 million. 19th August 2021, they paid $10 million. And 31st March 2022, they paid $3.5 million. If you add all this up, comes to about nearly $59 million. But he also gave the Citi equivalent. And he pegged the dollar to the Citi rate at 5.
5 Ghana cedis
to the dollar. You know, but that's by the by. In the document that the National Cathedral gave to the National Museums and Monuments Board to bring were these expenditure lines. If you go to page 2 of that document, under item number 2, number 1 is about site preparation works. They gave the expenditure line. Under item number 2, contractors mobilization. under contractors mobilization, we have these payments. Ribadi Limited, advance payment, 71.4 million. Again, Ribadi Limited, issuance of, I think, letters of something, 58.38 million Ghana cedis. Then they say final negotiations with general contractors. I think they spent some money holding that meeting. It was 11,767 cedis. Then part payment to Ribadi Limited. So Ribadi has been giving a lot of money. Part payment to Ribadi is 25 million Ghana cedis. Then JNS Talent Center Limited, 2.6 million. So, and this comes under contractors mobilization. So this is where this was their denouement, this was their undoing. This is where the minority began to sink deeper into this company. So we went to Registrar General to, as it were, look, as for everybody, we know who they are.
The consortium building the project.
Thank you. But, the GNS Talent Center, it was very curious. And the talent, you see, the name of the company, it's made it curious. So we dug deep. Then we discovered that it was a company recently established, purposely for talent and skills and talent development. That is their purpose, stated in the Registrar General's incorporation document. They have no business line of giving loans or savings or anything. So we began to question why GNS will be giving 2.6 million Ghana cedis. And they're also not a construction firm. In fact, initially we were looking whether it was a construction firm. So we thought that it was a company that had gotten a subcontract from Ribadi. So if Ribadi was giving a subcontract to a company, it is Ribadi that should be paying. In fact, that was our initial reaction. It's Ribadi that should be paying, not National Cathedral Secretariat. So we wanted to question why that money was given to GNS Talent Center as contractors mobilization, only for us to discover this scandal. What did we discover? We discovered that it was a company set up, owned by one of the trustees of the board, and also set up purely for training, offering consultancy in training skills, children things, essentially.
Like young people's things,
yes.
youth development and all of that.
Essentially.
If you say children's things, it sounds...
Anyway, I apologize. I apologize for that. Now, we also hear that they even have a daycare center in the way now that they run. Okay. Now, it has also emerged that at the time that they paid this money, they supposedly wrote to the company for some advance. They took a loan of 2.6. So they ought not to be describing this payment to GNS Talent Center as contractors mobilization. It could have gone under administration or something. This is where Parliament found the problem with.
So if you found a problem and you think it should have been the other way around, then the matter closed.
No, the matter is not closed. GNS didn't do anything to warrant payment from National Cathedral.
Cathedral has said that they needed some money.
Hold on.
Government hadn't given them money yet.
Selorm, you're a trained lawyer.
But we don't have a lot of time.
Yes, so I'm taking the matter methodically. The board has not even, pursuant to Section 76 of the PFM Act, Act 921, sought ministerial approval to seek for this loan from this company. The company, too, by law, is not engaged in the business of giving loans. To the whole transaction, it's such an irregular thing to do.
So it's financial assistance.
It is not financial assistance. It's a loan. It may be an interest-free, but it's a loan. No. You can't seek financial assistance from such an entity without approval of the board and the finance minister. Read the law carefully. So we further interrogated the matter and discovered that prior to this money moving from GNS Talent Center to National Cathedral, Controller and Accountant General had paid them 3.5 million Ghana cedis. Again, for no evidence of work done.
No, but that 3.5 million cedis may not be connected to the National Cathedral.
Hold on. Under what circumstances did the state pay GNS Talent Center 3.5? Because you see, before Controller and Accountant General will process any public payment, it comes with warrants. It's such a laborious process.
Yes, but Roxanne, you don't know whether they did some work for government before.
Exactly. So we have
bring in this.
No, I can't because the proximity in terms of time, it's very critical. That as soon as that money landed, a letter from National Cathedral went seeking for financial assistance or loan, as it were. Then 2.6 was paid. 2 weeks after, it was reversed. You understand me? Because the account of the bank, account of the GNS Talent Center had practically nothing until Controller sent that money.
So the money Controller paid was a main or major money.
Such a major money, 3.5 million.
He from the documents,
I mentioned
that 3.5 million.
But there was 8 million.
Balance, yes. And the closing balance of JNS at the time when they are transferring 2.6 million was 8.6. 8.66 million.
8.6.
Yes, their closing balance at the time when they are transferred.
I hear.
So this even 3.5 doesn't reflect.
It doesn't reflect.
Yes, because if
no, are you saying it's not reflecting that?
If you're stating
Controller, hold on. You see, the basis upon which Controller made the 3.5 million, we are getting it. We are getting the document. Because these are public documents.
Yes, but for now, we don't know.
We will know. But for now, we don't know. I am saying GNS Talent Center is not in the business of giving loans.
So that's fair.
Yes.
That has been settled. I
think
nobody has said
so where are you getting with this?
Sorry,
where are you getting with this?
What we are getting with this is that we want to establish that there's a conflict of interest situation, there's a collusion to launder money.
To launder money?
Yes, to launder money. To launder the National Cathedral money to private entities. These are the allegations we are making. We put the evidence out. We've quoted the law. If National Cathedral wants to do anything of that nature, there's a provision in the law, public financial management, and they ought to proceed according. They didn't proceed according to that law, and they acted. So we are putting all this together to make a case that warrants further investigation. The document they themselves brought are here. All the expenditure lines.
So Roxanne, how about if all of this is said and done, it's established that indeed those things occurred, but the motive or the intention of the board was not to launder money, do all of that. They just wanted to see the process or the project grow or executed.
Now we have also,
and we say that these are men and women of God, reputation, above board, etc. Just trying to get the things done. Maybe they didn't think about the legal implications and all of that, whether it's a loan or financial. They didn't think about all of that, which they ought to have done. They went about it this way because that's how they've been undertaking their projects in their churches. Though this is a public project, all of that happened. Would you still hold a view that they set out to do something wrong and you still call it conflict of interest, even though the intention is a crime?
A crime is a crime, irrespective of whoever commits it. Pastors have been arraigned before court for committing all manner of crimes. Men of God are before court for committing all manner of crimes and offenses. I've seen long charges read in court in respect of men of God who are standing trial or are being prosecuted for offenses committed. So this issue about being a man of God or a man of the world and all that is immaterial. We are dealing with accountability of the use of public funds. And Selorm, we have dealt with the motive angle. We have gone to establish that one of the directors of GNS Talent Center has an alias that links to one of the one of the board of trustees, a member of the board of trustees of the National Cathedral. We have uncovered that identity. We have gone ahead to establish other things that he has done using two names. We have established that the man has 2 different sets of birth dates. The man has used different documents using different names. The man has acquired 2 tax identification numbers, which numbers, pursuant to Section 275 of the Revenue Administration Act, you are not supposed to have two tax identification numbers. It's an offense to have, because the tax identification number is so unique, it's identifiable only to you.
Yes, but we also know that the GRA knows this.
Yes.
But the GRA has also told us that if you have 2 things for whatever reason, you can merge them.
You see, my problem with GRA is that GRA in itself is engaged in criminality. The law that empowers you to do what you are supposed to do says don't allow anybody to acquire two things. Then you allow a system where people can acquire 2 TIN numbers. I have put it on record that to acquire a TIN number, your biometric details are taken. So in order to acquire another, you have to provide a different set of biometrics to be able to sidestep the system in acquiring that. Because if you provide the same set of information, the system will pop up and say that no, you're already in the system, you already have a TIN. But
I'm not sure if I recall that my biometrics were taken. I recall going to some building around GRA. I entered a room, they took some details, and then they processed it for me.
Selorm, you complete a form.
Yes.
You complete a form. You sign your date of birth, all those things.
Biometrics, I'm not sure.
Very well. But whatever it is, your biodata is taken, which suggests that if you don't have any ill motive to acquiring a TIN, if you give the same set of information anywhere and the data is entered, the system will give you a prior information. That's the point I'm making. Unless the subsequent acquisitions process to acquire, you did so with a certain motive, which we are saying that you did it to evade the system.
All right. So I mean,
let me ask a question. Just a minute. The TIN number.
Yes.
It's a recent development from 2016. As of 2013.
No.
As of
yes.
As of 2013.
My TIN is as old as 2010.
Yes.
My TIN.
And so there was a process where people needed to merge.
Yes.
You
don't merge TIN. You only acquire it. In fact,
but the GRA is merged.
That is why I'm saying that Selorm, the GRA in itself is engaged in criminality, because the law says nobody can acquire double TIN. So the systems that you put in place should not encourage double registration.
And this gentleman's things were acquired in 2013.
But the GRA has been in existence in 2013. So if you encourage people to use the system to acquire double TIN, that is your problem. You, the entity itself, you should be held responsible. That is why they now put information out and say that people can merge their TIN. Even if you merge the TIN number, it doesn't make it 2 separate TIN numbers.
Very well. Very well.
You understand? So the law that empowers you says don't do it. So you cannot do it and purport to justify it.
All right. So, Paragraph, I'll take your final word on this just in 1 minute.
Well, in 1 minute, my final words are that the case is before SRAJ. We would wait for SRAJ to bring out their findings after the investigation and ask the minority side of Parliament to hold on to their evidences that they have into the public domain. They should hold on to it because they've submitted all their supporting documents to SRAJ.
But when the Secretariat also responds, then they will feel the need to also correct it in the public domain if what they feel the Secretariat has brought out is problematic.
I think that in recent times, the Secretariat has not responded after it brought out its first publication.
Very well.
They've not even responded to Okudjato's TIN number issues that he put
because they cannot, because that's personal, that's individual. It's the man himself who should respond to
that. But clearly we'll just ask...
But the man has responded.
Yes, but
okay. The man says he'll have his day as SRAJ. After that, he would
ask the minority to exercise some restraint once the matter is before SRAJ.
Very well. Franklin, you are on the next panel as well, so we'll talk to you. All right, thanks so much. So we will take a quick break. We will return and deal with matters of the domestic debt exchange and what has been happening to the individual bondholders. Thank you so much. My guest, Roxanne Nelson, Dafiamako, Member of Parliament for South Dai. Palgrave is also on the other panel. Yapebi, Dr. Yapebi, Global CEO of the Hard Group, joined us earlier, and we appreciate your time. We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
Middle, you're not Biana. I'm going to be able to see every time I just say, baby, shit. Mangashi.
Junior! I'm saying so now for maybe they know. Sister Cospa, it's one niggas. I'm used to them. Why? Why?
Down Yankanawa.
Sister Cos. Use gas. Gas ye fast, ye easy, ye convenient.
Let me see your hand.
It's Citi on the go. You don't have to miss any of your favorite television and radio shows on Citi TV and Citi FM. Enjoy thrilling content from your world of great television and relevant radio at your convenience. Subscribe to CitiTube on YouTube. Turn on your notification button and receive prompts on our live streaming sessions and new content uploads. For easy access to the CitiTube page, scan the barcode on your screens. Subscribe to the CitiTube page and voila! Unlimited content awaits you. Don't forget to subscribe to CitiTube for amazing content from Citi TV and Citi FM.
Citi TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access Citi TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access Citi TV on your television. Citi TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. Citi TV, it's your world.
Yeah, welcome back to the big issue. Just gone by, it was a discussion on the National Cathedral and the matters arising, the Shraj petition and all of that. A few of the messages that have come through on that matter. Hamdam from Nyuhini says, God bless you, Honorable Ablakwa. In my opinion, he is the only one fighting for the interest of Ghanaians and the rest for money, you say. Zalex Dwayne in London says, you cut my money, but I want money to build a cathedral. I said you should read Job chapter 32, verse 9. Pilgrim, that's to you. If you want to write it down and go and...
What's the scripture again?
Job chapter 32, verse 9.
Any scripture in Job is very dangerous.
Gaddafi from La Paz says, religion, politics, and poverty, which of these three need to be tackled? We all know that religion and politics have no problem. The problem that we have at hand as a country is poverty eradication and not religion and politics eradication. Good morning, Selorm. I think it will be in the interest of the Nado government to hold the construction of the cathedral. I believe God himself at this point has withdrawn his blessing from us and needs to be careful as a nation. We don't invite his curses well. That's what you say. Yao Nachimota says, from president travels to cathedral, what next? Good morning, Selorm. Please allow the MP to unleash all these details he's coming out with. The information he's giving is the ones the ordinary Ghanaian doesn't know, but we need to know. Well, my job is to moderate it, and I think I did exactly that. I've done it from Oyarifa. So We move on to the next matter. Your comments still welcome on 020-444-7030. We move on to the next discussion, which is on the domestic debt exchange program. As you may well know, Ghana is a highly distressed debt country. We are unable to service our debts. Our debts have reached unsustainable levels. And for that reason, Ghana has gone to the IMF for assistance. IMF says, fine, we can help you, but we need to be sure that your debt is sustainable. They did a debt sustainability analysis. It came out that indeed, Ghana's debts were unsustainable. Ghana cannot pay its debt if a few things are not done. And IMF says, before we help you, ensure that you bring down your debts to sustainable levels. Government says, okay. They said, okay, we are giving you what we call the staff level agreement. So you have the agreement. If you do it, you get the $3 billion you want. Now, government is showing that it's able to bring down its debt to sustainable levels, and the target is around 55-56% from now the 104 or 105% to GDP. What has happened is that now the finance minister in the budget announced what he called a debt operation. We didn't know the details of that until recently. So the debt operation has come to mean debt exchange program, or as part of it, a debt exchange program, where government is asking its domestic bondholders. So government owes a number of people. Those people are put into two groups, the domestic and then the external. Government is dealing with the domestic first because morally it is the right thing to do. If you're asking people to do something about a situation, you deal with what you can control first before you move outside. So government is seeking to tell people who have bonds with it, and people it pays interest to over certain periods, to exchange those bonds for newer bonds over a longer tenure, which means that if your bond, for example, was maturing this year, government could say, let's extend the tenure to, let's say, the next 5 years or the next 10 years. If your interest was, let's say, 20% or 25%, government is saying that, okay, as part of that, I'm not going to pay you any interest this year. The next time I pay you an interest will be in 2 years' time, and instead of 20 or 25%, I'm paying you just 5%. That is the arrangement currently ongoing. So initially, there were people who were not part of that debt exchange program. We had the banks, the pension funds, etc., which were initially part. But the pension funds people came and said, no, you cannot take this money because our money is for pensioners. TUC and the labor unions agitated. They threatened to go on strike and picket and demonstrate from the 27th of December. Government said, no, we can't take this. So pensioners' funds exempted. But in place of that, we are bringing in the individual bondholders who initially were exempted. Now, the individual bondholders, they are individuals, not really in any group. Now it was added. Now they have also found themselves in groups led by Senyo Husi, Martin Pebu, Eduana Nientwi and co. They are saying, no, you cannot touch our money. You cannot touch our money because this is all we have. And so that is where we are now. And they are also threatening a lot of things. There was an initial January 16 date. Government has extended that to January 31. But government says it is voluntary. You can either join or not. The people say they don't want, but government is encouraging them to join because without that, government makes us believe that the economy will collapse. Individual bondholders don't think so. My guest for this segment of the program, Franklin Kujo, President in Money Africa, Alex Mode, former CEO, Ghana National Petroleum Commission, Ghana National Petroleum Council, Dr. Theo Echampong, economist, Pelgrim Boachi and Dankwa, government spokesperson on security and governance, William Mensah, an individual member of the Individual Bondholders Forum. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I start with you, William Mensah. You are the individual bondholder. Yeah. These days, when I see people described as individual bondholders, I look at them well because it appears they have a lot of money they have loaned or given to government to so they can earn more. You met the finance ministry this week. The minister spoke and you guys went into a closed-door meeting. I'm not going to ask you what you guys discussed into detail at that meeting. The conclusion from that meeting was that a joint committee will be set to look at the matters. Has the committee been set? Has the committee started meeting yet?
Yes, the committee has been set. The committee started meeting. They have held their first meeting. Yes. But I want to first touch on the voluntary aspect that you talked about.
Okay, but that's what the finance minister says.
Yes, yes. Okay, so originally a debt exchange was announced, right? And it was voluntary right from the onset. But in all the correspondence, there was this underlying subtle, I don't know whether to call it threat or encouragement for people to exchange. Okay. But there's this line that says that your existing debt will potentially become worthless if you don't exchange.
But is that not a fact?
No.
No. Okay, go ahead.
It only becomes valueless if you don't exchange if government does not honor its terms under the existing debt structure.
Okay.
Okay. So by saying that statement, basically what you are trying to tell holders of the bond is that we are not guaranteeing that if you don't exchange, we would honor the terms under the contract. That's what it says. That's
government
what
will default.
Yes, technically that is the subtle threat. But we are all also aware that you cannot go under an IMF program on the back of a default. You need to engage the people, your creditors, and come out with terms that they would all agree on and have some. IMF does not want a situation where you have people, you owe people, you just tell the people, I'm not going to pay you, and then IMF, on the other hand, gives you money. They are not going to live with a situation like that. But if you can come to terms with the people that you owe and have room for IMF to participate, then they will participate. So there was that underlying trend. Now, then you take out the pension funds and you put the individuals in, and you still insist that it is voluntary, and you wonder why people are agitated. People are agitated because you've already put it out there that if you don't exchange, then I will not honor the terms of the original contract. So the fact that it's voluntary becomes meaningless because you've already thrown it out there that I don't know what's going to happen to your bonds if you don't exchange. So to the individual investors, by adding individual investors, you're saying either give me your money on those terms or risk your money becoming zero. And individuals look at the terms, the new terms that you gave out, and say, who can live with this? You see, so that clause that says that it's voluntary has been negated by comments that have already been made.
Okay, so maybe let's start from the basics. For somebody who hasn't been following or has difficulty understanding all these debt exchange programs. Initially, government came out to say, come exchange your bonds for 4 new ones.
Yes.
It amended it and came out with 12 new ones.
Yes.
Can you take us through briefly, in layman's language, what this new arrangement is and how much you'll be earning, from time to time on this?
Okay. So the 12 new bonds, they have separated bonds that are originally supposed to mature in 2023 from the bonds that are supposed to mature beyond 2023. And have come up with different arrangements for the 2 bonds. Now, for the bonds that are supposed to mature in 2023, government is saying, when you tender in, we're going to give you 2% of the value of that bond.
This year, that's in 2023.
Yeah, so it's like some upfront payment on the 2023 bonds for you tendering those bonds in. I think the rationale is that these bonds would have matured soon and you get all your money. Now we're exchanging it for longer dated ones. So we are giving you a little bit of a sweetener. So we'll give you 2% upfront. Now, but besides that 2%, the whole of 2023, you are not going to receive any interest at all. In 2024, you are going to receive 5%. And then in 2025, it goes to 9, and then 9.15, up to 2033. Now, your principal amount, you are only going to start receiving portions of your principal amount in 2027. In 2027, you receive 15%. 2026, you receive 15%, and then 14% thereafter until 2033, when you receive the last tranche of your principal amount. Now, when it comes to bonds that you hold that are maturing beyond 2023, you don't receive any 2% upfront. So you tender them in, you get 0. In 2023, you get no coupon paid to you, no interest paid to you. In 2024, you get 5% paid to you. And then in 2025, you get 9%. 2026, you get 9.15, and so on up to the final term of the bond, which is 2038. Now, how do you receive your principals back? Your principals also, you start only receiving portions of it from 2027. And that moves from 9% then down to 8% all the way to 2038. So that's what happens to your existing bonds that you are holding. Now, it's a bond, it's something that you're tendering in that gives you a certain cash flow. So you can analyze that cash flow and determine what does it translate to in terms of return to me as an investor. Okay, so I tender in my 1,000 cedis, and that 1,000 cedis gives me a certain cash flow over a certain number of years. I can find out what discount rate will make that cash flow equal to the 1,000 cedis I've tendered. And when you do that calculation, whether it's a 23 bond or it's beyond 23, you get something less than 8%. Okay, so basically what they are asking you to do is to tender in your current instruments and replace it with an instrument that over that period is going to give you a return, we call it a yield, of less than 8%. So let's say 8%. Okay, good. So investors look at that and they think this is a huge destruction of my value over time. Apart from the fact that people who have invested for specific purposes, right? And bonds are such that you can time your cash flows. So for the individual, if he knows that I'm going to have this need by this date, he'll buy a bond that has that maturity on that date. Okay. So by extending and breaking it into all those fractions, you already cause a lot of distortion to the individual investor. But even if we take that away, you are looking at telling this person that over this period of time, you are replacing your bonds for an instrument that gives you, let's say, 8%. Now, basically what you're saying is that you are destroying the value of that person's investment, because no one believes that we would get into a period where an 8% return will be attractive within the economic environment. I mean, because if you live in the developed world and you buy a bond that pays you 8%, you will see that as good return, okay? Because long-term inflation there is 3%, 2.5%. So if you're making 8%, now here we say our long-term target inflation, which we've never met before, is 8% plus or minus 2. So even if we grant that we would all of a sudden be so disciplined that we are going to meet, let's say, the higher band of that 8% plus or minus 2, we're talking 10%. So over time, that individual's wealth gets eroded all the time, you know. So that's what individuals look at and say, but this is unfair. Unlike the groups, where you can take each group, if it's insurance, if it's pensions, you can take them and look at what their conditions are similar, because if you take pensions, they all invest towards a specific goal, right? If you take insurance, they invest towards a specific goal. If you take banks, there are two main reasons why they are investing: to be able to trade those securities and to earn income on them. So, but if you take individuals, their reasons and aspirations are so varied that there's no way you can put them together and come up with. And how do you even start negotiating with such a group that is not homogeneous? That's why we take the position that the only way to deal with this is to go back to what you did in the beginning, that says that it does not make too much sense to include individuals in this debt exchange. So let's take individuals out and work with the groups that we can identify, sit down and negotiate. So that is the position of the
So how did the first meeting, I know you may or may not have been there, and I'm sure you'd have been briefed, you know. How is it going? How much time do you have to do this engagement? Because there's a deadline of 31st. I'll not be surprised if it extended again. But how much time does this joint group have to do this work?
Okay, so I don't think the solution to what is happening now
is the engagement.
Is the technical committee kind of thing. It is engagement. It is what should have happened right from the beginning, before the debt exchange was established. Because you see, if you are going into an exercise where you need people to voluntarily sign up, then what you do is that you find out what the various. Let me give you an example. So I sit on some boards of some pension schemes. Okay. Now, if you take the pension schemes, they have the tier 2 schemes and they have the tier 3 schemes. Now, the needs of these two schemes are very different. If you take the tier 3 schemes, you know, they can make withdrawals from the tier 3 schemes from time to time. And you can withdraw without tax after 10 years. Most of the schemes, their 10-year anniversary aligns with 2023. Now, so these employees have been waiting for 10 years to be able to withdraw in 2023. And you come out with with a program that does not work for them. Now, if you had engaged them, you could have accommodated the need of this group. I mean, these are both pension funds, but tier 2 pension funds have different needs from tier 3. You could have engaged them to come out with different things to meet these groups. Now, so what needs to be done now?
But the pension funds are off now, so that's sorted.
I don't know whether you've read the memorandum.
I've read the FAQs, and something in there makes me think that it's not done yet, because the memorandum, the amendment to the exchange, invitation to exchange, issued on the 11th of January 2023, issue 5. What is happening with pension funds? So negotiations, because we thought that was done.
Yeah.
So negotiations on the specific terms of an agreement with the pension funds are continuing,
yes,
and will be made public once an agreement on the details is reached. We thought that was done.
Yes.
So this year gives an indication that it's not done.
So to us on the Individual Bond Holders Forum, this is how we interpret it. We came out with this announcement. The group that had the strongest force to disrupt the completion of this was the pension funds, because they have the unions behind them. So let's take them out. Now, if we take them out, we still have a certain target. We want to reach 55%. Now, without the pension funds, what is the probability that we will have enough people signing up to reach the 55? Without the pension funds, it's becoming a bit, so how do we make up for it? Let's do the individual scheme. You know, and hope that we'll get some numbers there to make up the 55. So the approach has been wrong from the beginning.
Very well.
So the only way forward is to go back and do what should have been done right from the beginning.
But that will result in a shortfall. We won't hit the target because the pensions are out.
You see,
but I'll come to you, because I know you guys have proposed a few things.
Yeah.
Mr. Alex Mode. Alex Mode is former CEO of MPA, former CEO of Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. And he's a finance person. He's a finance person through and through. Mr. Mode, it appears that both sides are stuck in their positions. Government wants to do this because it has to. Government makes us believe that it's a necessity that we must undertake. The Individual Bondholder says our needs are varied. There's no way we can get into this.
Has to.
Government makes us believe that it's a necessity that we must, and that this must happen. What should be the approach? Of course, we've talked about engagement in the past. Now there's some semblance of engagement. A technical joint group set up to meet the two sides, or the two sides have to meet and come up with things. Is this the right approach? What must they be discussing? Government pays a picture as if it must happen, even though the individual bodies disagree. What must be the approach?
Well, I don't think it must happen, because we need to understand how much really is due by government paying these individuals. And my understanding is it's about 2 billion Ghana Citi. So the whole essence of going to the IMF is not just for austerity measures or debt restructuring, as most people sometimes evilly misconstrue, but rather going to the IMF as a partner to see how you can help us out of this bankruptcy situation and address the issues that brought us to this position. And that is why you go to the IMF. You go there for them to help you with short-term funding for your immediate needs, but you also go to them to help you on your short-term and medium-term needs, like fixing your main challenges. And your main challenges are your structural imbalances. So fixing the debt problem is not going to fix Ghana's problem, as many people, as the government has made many people believe that if you forego your debt payment, the amount of money you receive from the bonds you hold, we solve Ghana's problem, and that is it's misleading, and we have to ask them for the bigger picture. What exactly is government going to do to get us out of this predicament permanently? Permanently meaning fixing the structural imbalances, the internal imbalances and the external imbalances. If these are not addressed, we will get back into this situation within a year, because the fact that your debt payments is about 54 billion out of your total spend of 191 billion, from a spend of about 140 billion last year, we've increased our spend to 191 billion. Our debt payments have only increased by about 20 billion. So we have an additional 30 plus billion that has come from government programs that are also escalating. So the real question is, if you want to fix a problem, you have to come as a government with a plan of what you are bringing to the table. Government has brought absolutely nothing to the table apart from trying to be a bully and telling people, if you don't do this, then we are all in this together, and we won't get out of it. Rather, government should come up with a program saying, out of the 191 billion, we will cut expenses by about 30 billion, and we expect also our debt service expenses should be cut by 20 to 30 billion, and that is the contribution everybody is making. We have gone and increased wages, which is something I don't understand how we did that, especially when we are moving towards austerity, and then you're telling other people to forego their income, and you are increasing other people's income. So there's a little imbalance.
Yes.
And I think it's because of the pressure government is getting from the unions. What I don't understand is why government would ask individuals to join this when the basis of you allowing pension contributors to be exempt from this was because they made a case that they were individuals. So it's something government has to review. And I don't think this program, you have to do this program.
Very well.
And I believe government's threat is not credible in that your bonds will be worthless because most people are holding their bonds to maturity.
I see. So let me yes, we'll deal with that. But let me deal with Franklin now. Franklin, you've been part of all of this. There's some engagement which has been suggested. I don't know whether you are part of this engagement or not, but this has been what you guys have been calling for. Now it appears that government wants to talk, government wants to engage. Better late than never, we say. What should both sides be looking at? Is it a case that, the hardliner positions should be maintained by the individual bondholders, should be maintained, that take us out entirely? Or they can say, okay, initially we said this, but we think that this is how much we can give. Government, what can you do? So we come to a compromise, which essentially in the end will be in the better or greater interest of the country.
Selorm, I lost you momentarily, about 15 or so seconds. So if you could just summarize the question.
So what I'm saying is, what should be the content of this engagement? Better late than never. Yes, better late than never. What should the two sides be dealing with when they go to the table? Should the individual bondholders say that we stand by our position, we don't want it, take us out, or they can begin looking at the bigger picture and say, okay, we understand where we are. We think that you can do this to your budget, you can do this, you can do that. In addition to that, we can also give this. So it appears that two sides are agreeing on something and both sides are compromising something. What do you think? How should the engagement process that has begun with a joint committee, joint technical committee, be? We've called for the engagement, it has come now.
Well, a part of me actually feels that the question on the table, which the government has asked of the IVF, essentially is that they should come and help the government decide exactly how it's going to scale back on its expenditure and possibly raise revenues. I think that question is totally moot. if you ask me, I mean, this is my personal opinion. I think that the preconditions before this meeting was engaged should have actually excluded that in the first place. But the fact of the matter really is that just listen to this analogy. I mean, you owe me money. You are supposed to pay back. You then unilaterally vary the terms of the payments, and then when I ask you why you did that, you say that, well, you can't forgo certain expenditure. When I look clearly at your expenditure pattern or your plans for the coming year, you are trying to live like an Arabian prince when you're actually an ordained debtor, right? And then I ask you to give me my money. You tell me, okay, come and sit with me, and then tell me exactly which things I should forgo in order to pay you. You know, it's a bit of, it smacks of a bit of arrogance, really, if you look at it. And so, for me, I think the engagement, unfortunately, well, we've already started the engagement, and the times for which this engagement is supposed to take place is essentially saying, come and tell me what I should ordinarily be doing right anyway. I think that, unfortunately, it's boxing us into a corner. And because the government can come up and say, well, listen, even though you agree with me that these things should be cut, these are potential estimates that I may not receive revenues for, and because of that, I may not be able to cut, because besides these are policy issues. I think the fundamental points we should, and I know the representatives are going to make the same point again, that look, we have tried to tell you exactly what you should cut back, but you probably are coming back on the back of your own projections, however political, and tell me that for policy purposes or political purposes, I cannot scale back. And even in the extreme case, these are potential risks, they are not actuals. I submit that you go back to the table. You owe me real money. It is not some expectant money that you're supposed to be receiving based on taxes or what have you. So you need to honor honor the obligation. If push comes to shove, maybe the conversation about, okay, well, when we receive these monies that you want to give us within the times that were originally scheduled, we can possibly lend you a little bit more. And by lending, I'm not saying taxes, because you are probably overtaxing us already. You are probably boxed into a corner, and so maybe we'll see inside for you, like we say in Pidgin, and say that, okay, you guarantee us our original bond agreements, but then because of the things you have said you want to do, however stupendous they are, we'll give you some leeway, but even that you pay back. I mean, that is the only position I see as taking from this whole exchange, because for me, I mean, I look at successive budgets and I see that actuals are not really potentials, and so the government can come back and say this and this. Of course, we've seen about a 60% jump in capital expenditure. We could actually argue as well that for personnel that are employed, over 300,000 that Senior and others have been mentioning, we could scale back. We could actually scale back a lot more on a lot of what the government has promised, about 30% cutback. We haven't seen what potential values have been, what potential revenues were saved as a result of those announcements. So we don't even know what to start off with as we go into this negotiation, those terms that come and teach me the things I want to cut back on. I think it must be a root and stem approach. And I agree that the burden must be shared proportionately. In other jurisdictions that this has been done, the debt exchange has been done, the government or the debtor did not unduly place the burden on one party. It was negotiated and then done properly. But in this case, I submit to you again that, look, even if you agree with the government and say we want to cut back on ABCD, potentially they are going to come back. And I'm just being because I've seen these things work for close to 20 years of my active civil society work. They're going to come back and say, look, these things may affect the growth of the country, and so we need to be careful and all of that. Plus, these are not actual receipts. There's enough money to pay. Just commit to pay me. And if you want me to give you a portion of the gain to splurge, we can have that agreement. I mean, this is something I suspect should be guiding the conversation. And I know that our friends who are in the committee have a fallback position already, and I'm probably not divulging too much, but I'm just saying that we are still holding forth to say that pay us our money. We would only yield to this conversation about coming to teach me how not to be stupendous, only because for the optics it is also good, and then for good should I call it, for good politics, it's also good for you as a government. But in actual fact, you can't pay the money, and so you should pay. There's other point I wanted to make about the thought just escaped me.
Right. Yes. So just try and get a thought back. We'll come back to you. Dr. Tue Champong, he is a political risk analyst and an economist. He joins us as well. Doc, welcome to the program. Is there a way that government can exempt the individual bondholders, given the concerns they have raised, and still go ahead, work so hard, and then reach the 80% uptake they've set for themselves, and then secure the IMF program? Is there really a way?
Good morning, and I hope you can hear me. So I think let's work back from the 80% uptake. The point is that for any sovereign restructuring or debt restructuring exercise to be successful, normally you need what we call a qualifying majority of your bondholders to agree to that. And in Ghana's case, you need about 80%, right? So 8 in 10 of the people who hold these instruments to agree. And as currently we're being told, you only have probably about 30-40% or so uptake. And the reason is that the terms of the agreement as currently constituted don't favor a lot of the bondholders. And both William Franklin and the other speakers have spoken about it. But fundamentally, the whole cherry-picking approach and the sort of take it or leave it or attitude of the government is part of the reasons why we have, gotten to this point. On top of what I call, in my view, the lack of good faith and candor by the government, and also the idea that there's really no sense of burden sharing across the board. So the proposal for me, I think, is to go back to the drawing table, like others have said. And fundamentally, if you have to exclude the individual debt holders or bondholders from the whole exercise, and also exclude the pension funds and others, then what that means is that the 55% debt to GDP ratio that the government wants to reach or attain by 2028 is not going to happen. So what I'm trying to point us to is that we need to go back to the drawing board, even in terms of the whole fiscal arrangements, and renegotiate with the IMF, because the 55%, I think, can be pushed further back to about 2032. And what that does is to create a bit more room, and therefore you can now come back to the table to re-engage the different local debt holders on the exact form of the restructuring exercise. So part of the reason why the government is so keen on taking one group of people out and replacing them is that they have to meet that 55% threshold. And from where I sit, I think it's too onerous. I think it imposes undue burden on different categories of bondholders, but ultimately it's going to have a ripple effect on further slowing down the economy. Already the debt situation is quite dire, and we know that we have to restructure. But you must also not restructure to the point of more or less collapsing your economy to that extent. And therefore, I think really the first point here is for the government to go back to the IMF and sit back at the table and rework those numbers. If we want to still meet that 55% debt to GDP target from currently in excess of 100%, then it means we would have to make some drastic cuts, right? And that, I think, is going to be a bit too much. And that's why I think we need to probably extend the duration from just 2028 to probably about 2032, 2035. But that then means you need a national buy-in. You need to have all of your core constituencies or stakeholders, including the main opposition, because there's no guarantee that tomorrow or next year it's still going to be the same government in charge. And if we can do that, then we buy ourselves room. And then the whole domestic debt exchange exercise, we can start from afresh and start engaging the people again. But if we want to stick to the current targets, the 55%, and therefore impose all these hefty haircuts on different categories of investors, then there's still going to be a holdout. I would struggle to see how the government would meet that 80% qualifying majority
interesting point
by the end of the year.
Interesting point you make about re-engaging the IMF to relook at the targets, etc. But what would this re-engagement mean? We've secured a staff level agreement based on certain targets. So if we are to go back to them to re-engage, would they have to revoke this SLA we have so we start afresh? Or what do we do? Because I'm not sure we can build this renegotiation or re-engagement on the SLA that has been given already, because that has been given in respect of the targets both sides have agreed, and the IMF is happy with the 55%, and so they granted the agreement, or they let it go.
The IMF will always be happy with what you bring. The point is that we don't have to shoehorn ourselves to the point where you end up almost collapsing the economy and collapsing the very financial sector that you have built. That's really the fundamental point here. And it's also issues of, sovereignty in that regard. So I think if we have to go back and redo a new staff level agreement, and the most important even in all of this is the executive board approval. So we still have some room to go back and look at the numbers, because that 55%, from where I sit, it means further austerity, further cuts, further hardship on ordinary Ghanaians in the next couple of years. And we can possibly, smoothen that or lengthen that. And if you're able to push that a little bit forward, even by about 4 years, then fundamentally it means that the form and the nature of your domestic debt exchange that you have to undertake will be different. So we're not longer talking about 80% haircuts for like individual bondholders and pension funds, etc. But maybe we're talking 40%, maybe we're talking 30%, in which case it becomes a bit more sort of amenable to people receiving it. So that is where I am coming from, that all of this exercise in the current form, if you take out domestic debt holders, or the individual debt holders rather, if you take out the pension funds, if you exclude other categories of people, you water down the gains. And what that then means is that 55%, you're actually not even going to achieve it in the first place. You get what I mean?
Yes.
So you have to go back and sit first with the IMF, relook at the target, change the target, let it be a bit more amenable. But what that then means is that you need a broader national buy-in, and then that becomes something that people are likely to buy in, and therefore, you can then present that to the IMF board for approval.
Very well. So this is the big issue. We are discussing the matter of the state of the debt exchange program. What form should government's consultations take? Government is currently in a process of meeting and consulting with the individual bondholders, something they've called for many times, but finally it has come. The discussion is ongoing. You can join via our WhatsApp line 020-444-7033. Dr. Theo Champon just made some interesting points about going back to the IMF possibly to re-engage, and if to re-engage, re-looking at the targets. Ghana has a target of 55 or 56% of GDP. That's the debt. We should bring our debt levels to that. Currently in excess of 100%, and he thinks that going this way will be difficult because you've taken out the pension funds. The individual bondholders want to be taken out. When you do that, it will be difficult for you to meet that 55% debt to GDP ratio. But what he thinks should happen is that Ghana should go back to the IMF, re-engage, renegotiate, and say that, for example, we cannot do the 55% by 2028. Let's do it by 2032, for example, or some extended date. I'll come to Pelgrim, but Alex Mode will have to leave us in the next few minutes. Let me take his thoughts on these matters and what his way forward will be for this whole engagement. Then I come back and deal with Pelgrim for his response, because he speaks for government. Alex.
Yeah, I totally agree with Theo, my buddy, on this one. We disagree on many things, but on this particular one, we agree. You see, we are in bankruptcy, and people should understand, people should stop confusing why we're going to the IMF, where we are in bankruptcy. And people should also understand that government is like a large conglomerate, okay? Government is like a large conglomerate with a huge social responsibility. Unlike normal corporations that have very little corporate social responsibility, government has a huge social responsibility. So the government, who's representing the people, have gone to IMF with their challenge. The IMF have told them, get more discipline, come up with an improvement plan. And government has sat down, unfortunately, without consulting key stakeholders, which include the unions, the businesses, industry, and the citizens, and yourselves, Franklin, and all the think tanks, as to what is the best approach. And the best approach IMF is looking for honesty, transparency, and the will to actually get you out of this position. So what the IMF wants you to bring a few things, and most of them are common sense things. One is, first of all, you understand why you're in this position and how you got here. So what are you going to do in the future not to get back into this situation? And that is your structural imbalances. One thing the IMF is saying that your current problem, the immediate problem you have, like your shisheshi problem, is you don't have liquidity to pay your obligations. And some of the obligations are legal obligations, like your debt service. You have the domestic debt players and the foreign debt players. Ghana is in a peculiar position where our debt service for our local bonds is about 3 times that of our foreign bonds in Citi terms, mainly because of the high interest rates versus the low interest rates of the foreign currency debt, although the debts are almost the same, or were almost the same somewhere last year before our exchange rate went up. And now in Citi terms, our foreign debt exceeds our local debt. So you have to come with an improvement plan. One of the things they are saying is that you have to fix your debt service problem. That is a given. Now, 55, 60, 65, 70%, it can be graduated over time. You can have an agreement with how you're going to reach it. But the most important thing IMF is looking for, and any creditor, any serious partner to an institution, is looking for how you're going to manage your risks in the future. How are you going to manage your structural imbalances? What are you going to put in place? So I would have expected the government to come up with a plan, talking to the IMF as to the amount of money we need to fix the structural problems, not to fix our debt service problem. No. That is not the whole plan. We have to go back to IMF. So IMF is going to the board for approval. Government also has come to its board, we the citizens of Ghana. And we the citizens of Ghana told them that you took a very useless plan to the IMF. Go back and negotiate a better plan. And this is what we want you to do. Government is now understanding that it is serving the people of Ghana, and it is not sitting on a high horse dictating to the people of Ghana what you're going to do. Government has come to this realization, but now politically they don't know how to do this because it will look like they have lost the fight. But they should think about the bigger battle for Ghana. We the citizens want them to do the right things. And the right things have to be done is to fix the structural imbalances which have been there over and over, the internal and the external structural imbalances. If we put a plan forward to the IMF or any credible stakeholder, partner, of Ghana, they will approve it. So don't go asking for 3 billion over 3 years. Ask for more money. How are you going to fix your import problems? How are you going to put money in your key sectors like agri? How are you going to improve your education system? How are you going to improve your health system? These are the things you should go to the IMF. You have to have a plan. They need to see that you are a credible manager of the economy. You don't go just saying, I need some money for fiscal balances. And they look at you and say, these guys are not serious. Do you know what Greece went to do to the EU? Greece told them exactly how they're going to get out of this problem, and they should put the money down. And the Greek finance minister walked out of the meeting because he knew that they had to get him out of this because they had a lot at stake. The IMF and the World Bank, all of these institutions have a lot at stake here. Ghana has to succeed. So we need credible negotiators going in front of the IMF and speaking to them in the language they understand. Unfortunately, we send some minors, some minnows over to the IMF to do these discussions.
Very well.
We need to serious the country.
Very well. Thanks so much, Alex Mood, speaking, quite passionately about this. I'm not sure whether minors or minions were sent there, though. I'm sure the top officials of the finance ministry and government were sent there to go make those discussions, have those discussions. Thanks so much, Alex. Very salient points he raises there. He thinks that we should go back to them also and tell them that this is exactly what we need to get out of the problem, and he thinks they will listen to us. Pilgrim, quite a lot on your plate. Must we really be on this road? Individual bondholders, their needs are varied, like we've heard. Must they necessarily be part of this?
Selorm, it's a very difficult position that we find ourselves as a government. But uneasy lies the head that wears the crown.
Wears the crown.
And so I'm very certain that a lot of the conversations that have been held, we would attune our heart and mind to it. Let me begin. I mean, I've heard what Alex has said, William, Franklin, and Dr. Champong. Government has taken a bigger share of the burden. You will recall, as at March of 2022, the president at the end of the cabinet retreat stated that the finance minister was going to put together some measures. Now, to be fair, from the 1st of April, government put a number of measures, expenditure cuts in place. Now,
like what, the coupons, the fuel coupons?
Of course. Government cuts 30% of all MMDA's expenditure. All of government expenditure was cut by 30%. Fuel coupons was cut by 50%. Because you mentioned it, I like to reference that government put a purchase of vehicles from outside the country and taking advantage of President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo's automobile assembling plants and purchases of that. Government put a hold on starting of public offices. Government put a hold on traveling except it was important and necessary. Number of expenditure cuts. Government cut down salaries of all government appointees, ministers, deputy ministers, CEOs, deputy CEOs, all of that. If you look at the expenditure cuts as at March ending 1st of April right up to December, government raised close to about between 45 to 50 million Ghana cedis. Now, as at million. Good money. Might not be much, but good money.
Nobody said anything.
No, just
for emphasis.
Yes, you're emphasizing that. Good money, not much. But you also recall that when the President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo had the State of the Economy address as at 31st of October last year, he extended government expenditure cut to 2023. Government is in a very, very difficult position. I have heard the Individual Bondholders Forum. I've heard their issues that they have raised up. I have stated that anyone that has given money to government to invest definitely understands the risk associated with that and also understands the financial implication. So it's just unfortunate that we have to be bringing the very wealthy people who privately would not even want to come on media like William, to come. Now everybody gets to know.
No, but to be fair, I mean, you guys keep telling us that it's safest to invest in government bonds.
Absolutely, no doubt.
And we've listened and we've done that. Now you're punishing us.
No doubt. I mean, so you recall when we went into the IMF conversation from July of last year and reached a staff level agreement, there were a number of things that were put on the table. Now, one of them was the debt exchange program. And I recall that we stated that all maturing bonds in 2023 will be paid an interest of 2% and enrolled in the 7-year bond. The bonds would attract 5% interest in 2024 and then 10% in 2025 and 2026. However, in 2027, the bonds will pay a flat interest rate of 10% plus the principal till the bond extinguishes in 2033. And the breakdown is on and on and on, 10% interest plus 15% principal by 2027, 10% interest, 15% principal 2028, 10% interest, 14% principal in 2029, 10% interest, 14% principal 2030, all the way to 2033. Now, it's a very difficult position. Government has stated that we expect that the individual bondholders would have about 80% people voluntarily signing on. I've followed the IBF. I was in the meeting when the Senior Hosea and the rest of the delegation came to meet with the finance minister and some of the government officials. They raised their points and raised their issues. Professor Stephen Adai, who was there as a citizen of Ghana, stated
was there as a citizen of Ghana?
Citizen of Ghana, yes.
I thought he had an official capacity with the finance ministry, so I could have walked in there as well and be accorded.
You were not invited. But we know Professor Emeritus Stephen Adai and his role that he's played in successive governments over the years. But I recall in the meeting he's stating that almost 2/3 of his investments are in bonds, and he also appreciates the state where government is, and it's important that we try to agree so that we can reach some consensus. Now, their platform is continually having a lot of people sign on. I've looked at it in recent times. They have very close to about 206,940 people that have signed on. Government stated that 20% of the individual bondholders of 1.3 million people will not sign on. That gives us a total of about 260,000 people. In my mind, this is just my own permutations. In my mind, the people that the individual bondholders forum is representing is within the 20% that government already knows that they will not sign up voluntarily. In my mind, but it's not something I like to build upon some more. Even though government has started.
So the point you're making is that the government is provided for this because government anticipated that some 20% will not, and these are the 20% you think.
Yes, in my mind, that's what I'm trying to say. That yes, because if you do the calculation, it works quite well. Unless, of course, by the time we finish the conversation with the working group, they would reach about 300,000. Then we can know that
they are growing every day.
Well, they are growing every day. It's not a problem. 2-3 days ago, they added 20,000 more. So it's not a problem. If you look at where we are, I think it's a collective burden sharing that government is requesting for. That it's safer for you to sign on onto the debt exchange program, so when your money is protected for you. So I hear the argument that you have a contract with government that you've invested in government bonds, and when your bond is ready, your coupon is ready to take, you go and take from government. Selorm, I ask the question: when you come to government, as government has not got any money to pay you, what do you do?
There are a number of ways to get your money. If you owe me, I come to you, don't have it. When I go to court, I can find the court can grant me things.
The court can give the government terms to pay because you owe the individual.
Because government is owing.
But government has not stated that he's not going to pay your coupon. Government is only saying let's have a structural plan to be able to ensure that your investments are protected. And I think that's the main goal. The committee, the working group, has begun meeting with the individual bondholders forum. No doubt in my mind that in the cordiality of the meetings and the conversations, we'll be able to reach some agreements that would appease William and Senyo and David and the rest of the people that are within their leadership. But government is listening to them. We are in a very difficult position, and all of us must collectively.
Many people think that it's self-inflicted. I don't know. But how about the suggestion coming from this discussion that government should go back to the IMF and tell them that the 55% debt to GDP ratio by 2028 doesn't appear feasible, my people will die. Can we extend that so that we re-engage? Is that not the thing to do right now? Because you are obviously meeting difficulties. The bankers, we understand, have their difficulties. They've asked their people not to sign on, and a few other people. So it appears we are not seeing the end of this. Can't government re-engage with the IMF?
Oh, I think that government is with IMF. I mean, we haven't finished our engagement with IMF. And clearly,
in respect of the targets.
I know, but clearly IMF is also following the conversations. You know, we have a target to reach this by 31st of January. Yeah, should we not reach an agreement? Definitely, I'm sure that we would have some conversations with the IMF to be able to ensure that the Ghanaian people are safe, as much as we want to see to it that our debt to GDP is sustainable over the long haul.
Very well. So we take a short break. We will come back and then conclude this whole discussion. William Mensah is here. Pelgrim says rich people like William have been forced to come out to be talking, and he apologizes for that on behalf of government. We will come back and conclude the discussion. Don't go away.
Sky Water, premium natural mineral water for a refreshing life. Made from the depths of the earth. Crisp, clear, unique. Drink Sky Water. Be good to yourself. Sky Water. The sky is the limit. This advert is FDA approved.
Citi TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access Citi TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access Citi TV on your television. Citi TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. Citi TV, it's your world.
You're welcome back to the big issue. This is the final lap of it. This is where we take the concluding remarks of our panelists. Very interesting discussion. I mean, very interesting suggestions have come from the discussion. Dr. Theo Champong, Alex Mode, Franklin Kujo, Pelgrim Boachidankwa, and William Mensah. These are my guests. And the striking thing that has come is that government should be able to go back to the IMF, re-engage and say the 55% debt to GDP ratio we are targeting by 2028 doesn't appear feasible. My people are crying. My people may die before all of that. So kindly let us extend that to, let's say, 2032, and we can work around it. That will be a bit, relieving on the people. And I thought that was quite interesting. Alex Mo supports that position. I don't know what Alex thinks. William, for him, all he knows, all he cares about is that the monies of his people and himself will be kept safe. He represents he's an individual bondholder. He represents the Bondholders Forum, and he's also a fund manager. So he has people's money he is managing. William, so what have you been telling your people, and what is the position? Are they ready to go with government, or they think that they won't take it? How are you managing that? Because first of all, you are a fund manager and you hold people's money. You have invested in this. They trusted you to manage their money for them. You trusted government, invested in the government, and this is the situation. How have you been dealing with this?
Okay, so the situation we are facing now is an issue of trust. Now, in my first submission, I did say that an 8% return on bonds, on the face of it, doesn't look like a bad deal if you are confident that the right things will be done to the point where a return of 8% looks good. the problem we are facing is that no one believes that going forward, this government or any subsequent government that is going to take over is going to do the right things to ensure macroeconomic stability to the point where these returns that we are getting on these new bonds would make sense to anybody holding it. Why do I say that? I mean, how do we have a situation where you are telling your creditors, I can't pay you, and in that same week that you're having that conversation, your vice president, who is not a zoologist, is an economist, comes out and say, we are going to give every SSS
laptop
student a laptop.
But it's a social program. We must let our young people be competitive.
Exactly. This is a good thing to do, but you announce it in this environment when you are telling people that you are going to lose your investment because you have to sacrifice to get this country on a path where we'll get. So it's a crisis of lack of trust in governance. That is what we are facing. And the earlier we accept it and deal with it as it is, the better we would all be.
Very well.
If government realizes that that is why we are not getting the buy-in, then they'll start asking, what is happening? What do we need to do to get the buy-in? And until we get there, if government thinks that bondholders will take all the hits and in their head, everything else is going to be business as usual. If someone is going to lose the bulk of his wealth and you tell me that you are not going to use SUVs during the day, during the week, I feel insulted. So the reaction of these bondholders are like, I'm not going to exchange if it means I'm going to lose all my wealth. So be it, because they feel insulted by the terms. So the earlier they accept and look at it well, the better it will be for all of us.
Very well. Dr. Theo Champon, final or concluding thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, so just a quick one, and then Palgrave talks about collective burden sharing, and he mentioned some figures, right, about 50 million or so
47.
savings. But I mean,
45.
It's chicken change in the grand scheme of things, right? Because if you look at the expenditure and the waste in the system, and William talks about this, right? There is no collective burden sharing in all of this arrangement here. In fact, the government, and I'll put this on record, is actually impoverishing Ghanaians through this exercise. And so what we need to see on the part of the government is actually bigger cuts in expenditure, rationalized. Let's see some of the spending patterns that can be brought down and things that we can do with things like the state-owned enterprises. Something strong and fundamental needs to be communicated to Ghanaians to buy the trust and, get us possibly agreeing to some of the terms that have been proposed. But the way it is being country constituted, I'm afraid it's not going to happen because there's no collective burden sharing. And let no one lie to us that is what is happening. But above all, I'll go to my first point that I started with, that the big numbers that we're working with, starting from the IMF negotiations, is making this whole exercise a bit more onerous. So let's go back to the IMF. Let's talk to them. Let's see if we can extend the duration of some of the debt numbers, because ultimately it's about the economy and it's about livelihoods and it's about people's welfare and people's savings in this regard. And from where I sit and where I see things going in the current form of this exercise is basically making Ghanaians the poorer rather than, being better off.
Thank you. Franklin, final words.
If you think you've seen the last of promises, political promises, wait until 2024. If you allow this exchange to go without making sure that they pay individual bondholders their money, there'll be stupendous, should I say, an explosion of promises in 2024. And so, look, let's get our money right now and let the government do the burden sharing properly. Let's not wait until 2024 when it becomes music to our ears. Not at all.
I see. Palgrave, I give you the final words because you are government.
Thank you, Selorm. Really to state that the Ghanaian people should continue to repose trust in President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and our government leadership.
and also to thank the individual bondholders for agreeing to come to the table for conversations. We are certain that these conversations will hold the light of day. To thank Franklin and Alex and William and Dr. Champon for their inputs. As a listening government, we always will go back to the table and see what we can do. We are still with the IMF. We are in no doubt in our mind that reaching a staff level agreement and IMF board waiting to approve $3 billion US should hit the Ghana account by the end of this quarter.
All right, so this is how we conclude today's edition of the program, unless you have something else to say. We've dealt with two issues, the Cathedral matter and the domestic debt exchange program and matters arising. My guests have been Franklin Kujo, President, Imani Africa, Alex Mode, former CEO, Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, Dr. Thieu Champon, political risk analyst and an economist, Pagri Boachi Dankwa, government spokesperson on security and governance, and William Mensah is a fund manager, he is an investor himself, and is a member of the Individual Bond Holders Forum. My name is Selorm Adonoo. Thank you so much. See you again next week.